Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
From the black pool of genius, we'd like to give you our rendition of Stevie Wonder's Superwoman.
And I did see in the documentary Let the Fire Burn, at least one white person, and I could be in error, accepted into the family. I would like to know, at any point, was she considered a suspect at any point during or after this terroristic act was implemented on the MOVE organization?
You're talking about the bombing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. C.O.W.S. Africa is one of the earliest members of MOVE and has really caught more hell, or at least as much, if not more, than, our African American, our Latino sisters and brothers. And she has set an example of loyalty and commitment in this organization. She has literally been through hell. Her son was killed in that bombing. Her only son. Sue was in jail with my other sisters and brothers at the time of the bombing. And so she wasn't suspect, at all. I mean, we know Sue Africa. And just, to put this out there, they don't have to use white people to, infiltrate or come into black organizations. Look what Wilson Good did. He wasn't white. He was not white. There's the Black Legislative Caucus in Washington, D.C., and a resolution was introduced calling for Assata Shakur to be extradited back to the U.S. from Cuba. Don't you know that the Black Legislative Caucus members, a lot of them signed it? Maxine Waters, Bobby Rush, a former Panther, and other members of the Black Legislative Caucus. And when confronted about it, how could they sign something like that? Their response was, I didn't read the whole thing, or I didn't know Joanne Chesimard was Assata Shakur. That's a lie. But okay, I'll accept that. You didn't know. Why the hell didn't you know? How could you not know? So they don't have to infiltrate with white people. There's quite a number of black people that are ready and willing to, come into black organizations and, do the system's dirt for them. The only thing you can ever go by is not color, but watching people, seeing the example that they set. That's the only thing you can go by. Because a phony, a fake cannot keep up the pretense forever. It will break. That pretense will fall. It will fall apart.
But tomorrow.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Monday, August 15th, 2016. So I have been told. The audio segment you heard at the beginning, that was Ramona Africa, her visit to the cows, just a few weeks ago, summer of 2016. Where she was asked about Sue Africa, a white female member of the MOVE organization, where she said, tellingly, that Sue Africa had suffered more or equal to the non-white members of Philadelphia's MOVE organization. We were able to have Sue Africa on the program, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks after Ramona Africa's visit to the broadcast. Sue Africa was with us a week ago today, August 8th, 2016. Fascinating exchange. We're going to do a counter-racist review. We're not going to play the entire broadcast. We're just going to pick out some of the more telling moments of the broadcast. It seemed like we had some technical issues during the program where folks were having difficulty hearing us. Sue Africa reported it seemed like the line was breaking up at times. All of that is interesting because I think you'll be able to hear from the recording that on my end there was not as much of a disruption to the audio, to the broadcast. I will say this, though, for the folks that are listening live, that is certainly one thing that you can do. Generally, people are pretty good about that, but that's one thing that you can do. If the audio is not clear, if it seems like there's a disruption, there could be some technical interference, you can let me know. Certainly a lot of folks follow us on Facebook. You can message us there. You can drop an email, untiljustice@gmail.com, to let us know if it's not clear or if there's some distortion, just to make sure. But it was pretty clear on my end. I could hear the callers pretty clearly. I think there were a few moments where it seemed like it might have been breaking up on the caller's line, but I certainly had no issues hearing Sue Africa. And for folks who did have any problems, you can go back and listen to that broadcast in its entirety. I think the recording is fine, and I think you'll be able to hear as we do our review that the audio is okay. You'll be able to make out what everyone was saying, I think. Before we get to the audio segments, and I think we have I broke it up into different clips. I'm not going to say a whole lot. I might get in a sentence or two at the conclusion of each clip, but I'm kind of going to make sure that folks have time to comment because we didn't really have time at the conclusion of the broadcast last week with Sue for listeners to share their thoughts, analysis on what they heard. So I won't say a whole lot. I'll play each segment, give a sentence or two, and then we'll move forward so folks can dial in and share their thoughts. Quickly, just on the disturbance that happened in Wisconsin over the weekend, while we were live on air during the compensatory call-in, no less, this past Saturday, once we got off the air, I started watching the local Milwaukee news, Milwaukee, Wisconsin newscast. They were covering things live and, going through lots of the details about the unrest and all of that. It was deja vu. I felt like I was seeing Ferguson 2014 all over again, and folks said that it was almost 2 years to the day. When I was watching it, I kind of had the volume down low because I pretty much knew what to expect. It was pretty much like they have racist white supremacists, like they have a schedule Like they have a schematic about how these events are supposed to go, and it was almost identical to what I watched in 2014. The police will come out and give their statement. They will bring out members of the clergy. There will be a prayer. There will be a call for let's end the senseless violence and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, it was, if you've seen one of these events, you've seen them all, basically. So they got through all of that, and they prayed, and yes, white Jesus, help us, blah, blah, blah. So they brought out some other black people later on to speak. And I was stunned. I normally try to record some of the audio because sometimes people will slip and they will insert a moment of truth. And this happened during the situation with Milwaukee, where some black people came out and they were speaking, and they were basically saying that this is all about racism. This is happening because black people are being treated worse than anyone else in Wisconsin, and they're frustrated. This problem is not being addressed, and we need to do something specifically to assist the black people of Milwaukee. And it was followed by another black person who came out and almost said the exact same thing, making it clear what the problem is and who needs the most help, black people. So they say all of this, they finish, and they pitch it back to the folks in the studio during the news telecast, and they said, wow, they were just speaking plainly, providing context to what was happening. And I was, oh man, I should have recorded. That was for me to air on the program. I'm going to have to see if I can dig through and find it. But once again, I said that consistently. Pretty much anytime there's a significant incident dealing with white supremacy, racism, someone, when they are being serious and giving analysis, they will include the term context so that people get a deeper, more full understanding of why these things happen. Context of white supremacy. That said, additional context for the broadcast with C.O.W.S. Africa. I was prepping for this program, and this program was followed the following day, that would be August 9th, by Antoinette Harrell. We were talking about the horrors at the Dozier School in Florida. Very important broadcast, lots of great details, and we're hopefully going to have Pastor Gaddy, who is one of the victims at the Dozier School, on the program, hopefully this month, August. So my Sunday, August 7th, I'm preparing for both of these programs. I had to read Ms. Harrell's book and do my research to go back, make sure I was clear with dates, information, what I wanted to talk about with C.O.W.S. Africa. I was interrupted with very little notice. Some of my victim of racism, non-white pals were in the neighborhood, and they swung by, and it kind of totally disrupted my planning for really both programs, because I was just going to read and prep for this program, the C.O.W.S. Africa visit, last Sunday. And so they came by unannounced, basically, very early Sunday morning, and ended up hanging out for the next 2 days, even through the C.O.W.S. Africa broadcast. And so they had been on vacation, kicking it, having a blast, enjoying summertime in the Pacific Northwest. Yay for them. And you know, I think some people might be able to relate for this when you have individuals where they have been out on vacation or having a good time or what have you, and you are not doing that, where you are doing something serious or doing whatever you're doing that is not vacation, and they come into your space and you end up getting pulled into their orbit. Kind of the energy that they're on, having fun and chilling and all that, and you can kind of get pulled into that even though you are not on vacation. That kind of happens. So it really reduced my planning and what have you for the program, and even during the broadcast it had an impact, because they're in vacation mode, so they're out chilling, and you know, we're going to get slushies and blah blah blah, doing all this stuff, and we're doing the program. I think I can pinpoint it as we roll with the program. It had an impact on me, and even how this show, the broadcast with C.O.W.S. Africa, evolved, because I was just in a very different space because of their presence, as opposed to what this broadcast would have been like if they had not been present, if they had not come by to visit, which was great. Fun times, all that. We discussed racism, white supremacy, got to aid a pregnant black female. Awesome all the way around. But it had a dramatic impact on how this broadcast evolved, even particularly when we got later in the program and she began with her accusations against Gus, that Gus is a cop and that I lied on her and all this other stuff. It really had an impact there into, I think, maybe 20 minutes before it got to that portion of the broadcast, they came back and were like, oh, we got peach mango slushies for everybody. Here's a slushie for you. And so she's doing all this. And I was just like, man, I'm going to enjoy my peach mango slushie and whatever for Sue Africa, whatever. You can make your accusations. We're just going to try and get through as many callers as we can. But that, just for additional context, had a big impact on Gus not being very disgruntled or upset when she, in my view, just doing what whites do, being tacky and making her baseless accusations. With that, we will get to the audio segment. I'm actually going to take 5 seconds to hang up and dial back in just because I can hear something in the background that I normally do not hear. I'm not sure where it is coming from, why it's on the line, but I'm just going to hang up and dial right back in. And then as soon as I do, we will begin with the audio segment, Sue Africa. Give us 10 seconds. We'll hang up, dial right back in, see if that clears the line out.
Access code accepted. This conference is being recorded. Q&A session start.
Seems like I can still hear it a little bit. Disconnected myself, dialed back in. I can still hear it slightly. Not quite sure where it's coming from. If there's any sort of monstrous distortion when I go back and listen to the archive, we'll make the necessary adjustment. I'm just looking at the volume meter to see if it's showing out on the recording. It does not look like it's anything major, but folks can let me know if you're hearing anything wild that's making it difficult for you to digest the program. With that, we will get started. This is Sue Africa, white female member of the MOVE organization from last Monday, a week ago today. This is the first audio segment. This is the longest segment that we're going to play. This is about 20 minutes where she gives some of her background, growing up, that sort of thing about MOVE, and then the rest of them are much, much shorter than this segment. So this is about 20 minutes. Context of White Supremacy. What was if you can kind of tell us before you were a member of MOVE and then some of the details of your joining, but what was your existence as a white child, young white woman growing up prior to MOVE? What was that experience like, and what did you think about race at that time?
Well, we talked about this briefly, and I told you I never met with any racism until I joined MOVE, and then I met with plenty. I lived in a neighborhood that was very privileged. It wasn't one of those gated things, but, it was very privileged. And there was only one black person in my entire town, and he didn't really stick around us. My father was also the chief of the fire company, as well as, working for the government as a mechanical and electrical engineer. And when the cops would stop me for speeding, or I was picked up one time for shoplifting, I was let go, and I was told, now, Susan, don't do this again, or I'm going to tell your father. So, I grew up looking at cops a certain way because that's the kind of so-called privilege I lived up under, because I played the game, okay? I didn't know I was playing the game, but I was playing the game. When I came in MOVE, oh, no, you stepped out of bounds with this one. I was accused one time on a radio program. The woman said, Sue, as far as I'm concerned, Sue Africa has lost her right to be white. I'm like, lost my right to be white? I didn't know it was a right to be white. But that's how people looked at it. When I came in MOVE, oh boy.
How did your family respond?
My family was not at all happy about it. Trust me on that one. I grew up with this statement: never judge a person on their color. That's what I was taught.
And when I saw how my parents reacted, I was in shock because I was like, well, whatever happened to never judge a person on their color? That was out the window. That was just a euphemism, whatever you call it, And I was in shock. But one thing about my parents, until their death, which they both died while I was in prison, they supported me. They were very upset about May 13th. They wrote the parole board letters. My father even made a statement that the members in his fire company told him, well, how is Susie doing all this time in prison? You got rapists and child abusers and murderers that don't do that kind of time in prison. So my father started seeing, hooking up, even though he was a very strict government man. Trust me on this, very patriotic. And he did not like it that I was in MOVE. Plus, both my parents were very scared after the confrontation, and they felt like I was going to be killed. So, but just to let you know, my mother had a lot of manic depressive problems, and after my father died, my sister put her in a nursing home. And I used to call the nursing home, and I had a very good relationship with my social worker. And I would call there, and just to show you the kind of trust, because of MOVE law and my belief and my teachings in John Africa, how she trusted me over my sister. She begged me. She told me my sister was going to give her shock treatments for the manic depression. My mother had shock treatments when she carried me, and she was deathly afraid of them. So I tried to appeal to the doctors through the prison. It was hooked up so I could talk to them. They didn't really respond. My mother was hysterical. She was begging me to do something. Alberta was out here at the time, and Mo was out here, and we had a support group out here. They organized a demonstration, and they went up there and demonstrated at the hospital. And I called the prison, the nursing home, and I told them they were on the way up there. They were demonstrating, and they were going to be exposed. They did not give my mother those shock treatments. And my mother was just like begging me to come home, which I had no control over, because she knew that I had more feelings and I was more understanding and sensitive than my sister, and that was because of my belief in MOVE law. So I just wanted to make that point. But I incurred a lot of racism. Oh, my goodness. When I started getting arrested, the head of Civil Affairs, who is very famous, oh, my goodness, I just forgot his name. He was head of Civil Affairs all through the Rizzo era in Philadelphia and very famous. He planted heroin on me, and I got some charges for that. I had never been to prison. I had never been searched before, and they're telling me to pull stuff out of my pocket. He had handcuffed me, Sensel, that was his name. He had handcuffed me and behind the back. I didn't know he put drugs in me. I'm pulling stuff out of my pocket, and here I pull this big packet of white stuff out. And I had never did heroin. I did smoke marijuana, but I had never done any kind of cocaine or heroin or anything like that. And I didn't know what it was. I pulled it out. Next thing I know, I'm being booked for possession of drugs. And they tried to play it up in the newspaper. And,
What year was this, after the MOVE bombing or before?
No, this was in the early days. In the early days, when we were what happened was we were demonstrating. Really, we were protesting against this old folks' home that was up the street, and these guys, old men, and we had a car wash, and women, they'd come down, we'd give them money, we'd give them food, and they would be telling us what would be going on up there. We started protesting against that, and we started getting arrested. Then they started focusing on us. Lee Singh and Janet were walking to the store. They were both 3 and 4 months pregnant. They were stopped, beat up, sent to prison for assault on a cop, of course, and they both miscarried. So we started demonstrating against the infamous 16th District. Well, from there, we got locked up for profanity because this is how we are taught. You don't use a nice word to describe a profane situation. We use the word motherfucker because we're taught that motherfucker is somebody that fucks over Mother Nature and life. And that's what a cop is. So we call him a motherfucker. We substantiate it, but of course we got arrested for using profanity and disorderly conduct. Those were the charges. Well, we started going to prison. And then the people that were out here were demonstrating against that. And we were like a revolving door in and out of prison. Then we would get arrested because we represented ourselves in a courtroom. And they would tell us to stand up. And we would be, no, I'm not standing up for you. You're not God. You don't have the truth. You know, what do? You sit up there and roll dice. You know, comes up 6, you're innocent. Come up 3, you're guilty. We don't have no respect for that. It's not absolute. So, no, we're not standing up for you. Okay, we were arrested for contempt of court. This is how these things went down. I was in the courtroom at one point. I was 6 months pregnant with my son, and they were dragging my sisters and brothers out. They had stuffed Kotex in their mouth. They were beating them up. I stood up to put out information in this big courtroom, and in front of the judge, full view of the judge, this cop comes down and beats me with a blackjack. I had to be sent to the hospital, but I was strong. The baby was fine. You know, I was the first woman to give natural birth to my child, aided only by the principle of motherhood. And my child was 10 pounds when he was born, very healthy. And the news media came out 1 hour after I delivered him. I was doing 50 sit-ups, 25 push-ups. I ran every day, right on up to the day that I delivered. And this is the kind of strength and health, and this is what appealed to me about John Africa and Move, because I suffered from manic depression. I had all kind of health problems. I had kidney problems. I was in and out of hospitals. I had high blood sugar. I had hypoglycemia. I had all of it. All of it was stress. All of it was stress. And here I am, 68 years old. I haven't been to a hospital or a doctor in, 40 years. 40 years.
Wow.
Yep, 40 years. And I'm still running. I'm still strong. I don't have no ailments. And all that is due to the teachings of John Africa. And that's why I'm still in Move.
Wow.
That's why I'm still in Move.
What?
And just to add to the list real quick, I was sent to a mental hospital when I came up for trial because the judge was like, oh, no. I can't let you go out there. You're going to get killed. He thought he could, you know, bring me around, convert me. He would call me in his chambers, talk to me. And he couldn't. I would go back out there and still do what I was doing, putting out information. So finally he just gave up and used the tactics of intimidation, sent me to a mental institute for 6 months. And it was there that I met Momia. They never put drugs on me because there was too much pressure on them on the outside to do that. But they did try a lot of stuff with me. But John Africa always taught us to be prepared to go to jail, to mental institutes. He told us to document everything we saw. I had a good relationship with the people in there. They did not let me see Move people or talk to Move people on the phone, only my parents. And Momia came up as a reporter. This is way before his arrest and everything. He was a very, you know, prestigious journalist out here. He came in to interview me with a tape recorder, and I laid it on out. I had all kind of documentation of beatings up there, stealing money, raping the younger women, all forced medications. He put that out on the air, and when I came up for my evaluation, and the judge told the head of Viberry Mental Hospital to give me another 6 months, he was like, oh no, I can't do that. She got to get out of there. And I was released from there. And when I was in prison, when I went up to prison, we were on a 50-day hunger strike. They just swore I started that because I was white, and I just got to be the leader because I'm white. And that wasn't it at all. My sisters were already up there, and when I told the coordinator what was going on, that the lieutenant, a man, told them that they were going to stay in solitary confinement for 100 years, the coordinator said, oh, no, we'll just see about that. All that had happened with Bobby Sands and the IRA. They were on hunger strikes, and they had died on the 44th day. Well, we went on a hunger strike. We were strong. We were prepared. We were on it for 50 days. When 50-day hit, they got scared. They shipped me out to an all-men's prison in the middle of the night. That was designed to break me. But I was very strong at that point. I didn't come in strong, but I was very strong at that point, and I had a real strong faith and trust in Mama and John Africa and my teachings protecting me, and I was protected. I was protected. So, that's some of the things that I went through. Oh, let me just top it off with this. These guards and matrons up there acting like they liked me because I was white. When May 13th happened, they come to my door and say, Sue, we're here to inform you that your son Tommaso is dead. That's how they told me. That's how they told me. I said, yeah, well, your fucking ass has been dead already. You already dead, so get out my face. But, yeah, that's the kind of shit they would do to us undercover and the kind of stuff they did to me. Because how dare I leave the white race? And I didn't leave the white race. I'm in move, but I am committed to giving information to my people. I don't hate white people. I don't hate white people.
When you say committed to giving information to my people, who are you talking about specifically?
I'm talking about white people.
Oh, okay.
That's my activity.
Okay.
That's my activity because a lot of times white people relate more so to me because I am white. But, I can't be swayed by racism. I'm too strong and clear at this point about what's right and what's wrong. And, who the enemy is. The enemy ain't somebody black and the enemy ain't somebody white. The enemy is this goddamn system that is tricking everybody so that they can keep clashing so that they can have all the money, all the clean air, all the clean water, getting Mars ready so they can go up there, just taking strength out of black people, putting all the McDonald's, all the fucked up food, because they have been so jealous of black people's strength ever since slavery and before. That's why they enslaved black people, because black people had so much physical strength, and they were so jealous of it. They were so jealous of it. That's why slavery, really, besides money, of course, everything is about money. Ain't no wars for freedom. They're fought for money. That's why they push this money. That's why these young people are so confused and kill life, kill their brothers, their sisters, for sneakers, for watches, This is just bad how this system has tricked people. And John Africa has moved people to clearing up confusion and showing people who the real enemy is.
I know.
It's the industrialists.
Hang on one second. I want to insert Context of White Supremacy, our guest, Sue Africa. One thing that stood out, or a couple things that stood out, where you said the enemy is not black people, the enemy is not white people, it's the system, the industrialists, and you were explaining, but then when you said that's why they enslaved black people because they're jealous of them and black people are so strong, and slavery was about money, but it was also this element of jealousy. Unless I have been misinformed, the they that enslaved black people would be white people, and whether. Well,
let's not forget that. Let's not forget that the black Africans help with that too.
Oh, right.
We all know history, and we all know that was hand in hand, and that was money.
Right.
Was money.
I do want to insert though. I've said, and I know many people have brought that up on the program. I take the position that there is a monumental power differential between the invading whites in the enslavement of black people and any non-white person in the universe that ever aided with enslavement or any other aspect of racism, white supremacy, and that monumental power differential makes a huge difference. But just that seems...
I agree with what you're saying there.
Hang on one second. Just to me, anyway, that seems like a contradiction to me, and maybe even just an error if in this clear setting, in my view, the enemy would be whites. These are the people that are most to blame if we're going to talk about earlier eras of white supremacy, slavery. To saying that the enemy is not white or black, that's, to me, as I said, it's either a contradiction or just
what's keeping it going right? The white man that's keeping it going?
Hang on 1 second, please.
Or is it the system?
I had one other point I wanted to make. And it's been it has been to just hearing like your experiences and what you went through, and your son died in the 1985 bombing, and just some of your experience, how people have responded to you being a white person as a member of this organization, predominantly black organization in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. When we had Ramona Africa on the program, like just listening to her and what she went through, for me, it was a very different experience hearing her views and experiences, and then listening to you today as a white woman. I wanted you to respond. For me, just the fact that you're white, I still suspect, even given everything that you've been through, to me, you being a white woman is the dominant, most important theme when I'm talking to you and I'm hearing all of your experiences. I still have that suspicion that you could be a racist white supremacist given everything that you've done. Do you think that's logical, that a black person would still think that way? Is that logical?
That a black person would think I'm a racist?
Yes, ma'am.
What's that based on? I don't understand.
You did say that you are a white woman. Is that correct?
Well, I said that to so people would understand. I don't think white. I don't think in any color, thanks to John Africa. You know, when I first came and moved, I didn't even know I was a racist. It was actually years before I saw that. I mean, I had clues, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong.
What?
I had
clues like what?
Like, I'll tell you like what. I had, there was a girl in the organization, and she lived upstairs, and she's black and very raw, very black. We didn't get along at first, and I had a closet in my front room in headquarters. She didn't have a closet. She put a coat in my closet, and I had a coat in my closet. And her grandmother had made this coat. She had sewn it for her. And she didn't really wear it, but, you know, it had certain sentimental, and she, you know, if she had to, she would wear it, but it was kind of a dressy kind of coat, and we didn't really wear those kind of coats anymore. But, you know, I knew her grandmother had made it, but my dog had puppies, and I was looking to put something down for the dog to lay her puppies on. I went in there, and I grabbed her coat, not my coat, her coat, okay? It didn't even dawn on me what I was doing until it was brought out, you know, and she said something to me, and I was in denial, and it was brought up at a meeting. Now, I wasn't like, you know, run over with a truck and you're a goddamn racist, but that's not how things were dealt with in the organization, because people knew I was very weak and very brittle, and if they came at me like that, I wouldn't be there anymore, okay? I would have run right on home to Mommy and Daddy. So, you know, I was just given information about it being wrong and why I did it, you know, and that it was superior. But I got to tell you, Gus, it, like, still washed over me, okay?
What do you mean?
It took so many examples. I didn't pay it a lot of attention. That's how indoctrinated I was with that superiority. Now, years later, I can tell you very honestly, I despise that trained superiority in me. I still had some of it when I was in prison. I remember the subject came up, we were talking about it, and one of my sisters said to me, yeah, I know, because I don't like that stuff in you, Rhea. Everybody called me Rhea. It was a nickname. And, you know, because when we go through a door, I'll open the door, and you'll walk through it. I was like, I do that? I really do that? She said, yeah, you do it. The next day, I did it. And when I did it, I did see it. I was like, oh, my God. I did that shit. I'm fucking superior. I'm a goddamn racist. I started paying attention to that shit. All that training that has been put in white people to think like that. And all the examples, a lot of them that I told you, and a lot more that I really haven't even gotten into, beat that shit out of me. And I worked hard in this organization to incorporate and apply John Africa's teaching of equality. I mean equality for all life. Let me give you an example.
Let's not. Context of white supremacy. So that is segment number 1. As I said, I'm going to try to move briskly through each segment, and then we'll get to the phone lines so folks can offer their commentary. So quick things before we get to the next segment. I would be interested if folks have thoughts on C.O.W.S. Africa's voice, how she sounds. I think this has come up before. We've had other white people on the program who have been members of predominantly black organizations. I remember 2009 we had a white guest, white female, on the program who was a member of the Nation of Islam. She was married to a black male. And it's been a few other people as well, with just the way that they sound. Not necessarily word choice, although that, is a part of it at times as well, but just the way that she sounds. What do people think about that in her presentation, her performance, if you will? I also, with all of these stories about what she has been through, and a lot of this, information can be substantiated. I mean, they have prison records and all of that. So, I mean, it might not even be that she is being deceptive about any of this, but it very much to me sounds like a white person who can pile up all of this to say, see, look at everything that I've done. I'm not a racist. I've been to jail and my child died in this fire. I've been in this organization for decades. I've been locked in a mental institution and I have incurred racism. I had heroin planted on me. I was beaten while I was pregnant. And oh my gosh, I wasn't able to watch, I missed out on all the good television programs over the past few years, and just I've had to give up so much to do all of this. I certainly am not a racist, and even more than that, you have to be like in awe. Superwoman. So we started out with, you have to be in awe of all of this. I mean, just listen to what I've done. That's very much the way that it struck me, and it did not resonate with me in that manner at all. I feel like I have also heard that sort of performance from whites before, whether it was whites a la Bernie Sanders, look at what all I did during the quote-unquote civil rights movement, the younger generation of whites, hey, I was out there, I was in Ferguson, man, I had my sign, I was out there, and justice, hands up, don't shoot for Mike Brown. I was in New York, I can't breathe. I got my sign right here, and I was arrested, and they got video of me right there, going into the patio. See there? I am totally down for the niggers. It is tons of that has been done over the years, and it is, in fact, has the total opposite effect for me. It is not impressive. It is nauseating. Timothy Wise does a lot of that, too. I did not ask for her view, her response to my definition of racism, white supremacy, because I suspected that there was going to be a lot of malarkey and buckets of words on this program, and I suspected that could end up taking up like 30 minutes in and of itself, just going over definition of racism and, her just throwing out a lot of nonsense. So I just kind of wanted to get through things as quick as possible and not even give her the opportunity to bog down on a lot of nonsense around her quabbles about the definition of racism, white supremacy. For me, I think I mentioned this during the broadcast with C.O.W.S. Africa. For me, going into this program with C.O.W.S. Africa, I had, I won't say hesitancy, but it was certainly on my mind. C.O.W.S. Africa, I think she knows personally Mumia Abu-Jamal. I think she, continues to have contact. They are in the same state, close proximity. I think she, has phone contact and what have you. Certainly she, has a lot of contact with Ramona Africa. They're still in the same MOVE organization. And I certainly would enjoy speaking with Ramona Africa. It was great having her on the program. She helped us get C.O.W.S. Africa on the program. It would be phenomenal if we could get Mumia Abu-Jamal on the broadcast, and I have had this happen before where people have come on the program, racist suspects and victims of racism, non-white people, where they came on the program, and once they exited, it was, that no good, dirty Gus is the worst so-and-so scoundrel in the universe, and I'm going to discourage everyone in the universe from having anything to do with him to make sure that they think he's a scoundrel too. That there has been a lot of that, and I was like, man, I hope this doesn't end up being something where Ramona Africa is, no longer willing to be in touch or communicate or what have you, or is not pleased with how the interview goes. Same thing for Mumia Abu-Jamal. But at the end of the day, this is united, independent effort to counter racism. And a lot of this really goes back to what I have said consistently for years now. If you like the program, so what? If you don't like the program, so what? Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. It's not personal, and some of this even gets into why I say I'm really not interested in anybody calling me brother, sister. I'm almost kind of at the point where I would prefer if people didn't use that language on the program at all, because it's not worth a pecan. At any rate, it really cannot be about, this is the stance that I'm going to take because I hope that this person likes me, or this is the stance that I'm going to take and I hope that I can maintain this relationship with this person. It's really about, as Dr. Welsing would say, using your brain computer to come to logical conclusions about what should be done, what should not be done, and making assessments of individuals or situations to figure out the best way to proceed to solving this problem expeditiously. That's what we should be about, not being concerned about how people feel, what people think about you, and if you have homies, pals, brothers, whatever, at the end of whatever it is that you're done. The end goal is to replace white supremacy with justice, and I knew I was not going to be able to tolerate but so much of her rambling and talking about what she has done and her escapades with this group of black people in Philadelphia, as though I am impressed. I am not. I thought it was also very significant where she said that she incurred a lot of racism, particularly given some of her commentary as we continue to roll with the program, how much she was mistreated as a white woman suspected race soldier when she became a member of the MOVE organization. I also thought I'd put this in bold where she stated before joining MOVE that she suffered from manic depression. I think people have commented before, and we've had many illustrations when we've had whites on the program over the years where they are soothed, where they get their ego stroked by coming around victims of racism, particularly black people, where they can be praised and congratulated, and oh, it's so wonderful that you're here and you're working against racism, you're working against your own quote-unquote privilege and your own identification, participation in the system of white supremacy, and oh, how wonderful you are. There has been a lot of that over the years, and for this white woman to say that she was suffering from manic depression and then to go to MOVE and now she's doing great, that is noteworthy, profound, to say the least. And I linked that even when she talked about some of the incidents where she practiced racism against her fellow brothers and sisters in the MOVE organization. The incident with the coat was fascinating. The incident with the coat was fascinating. But when she shared that and she talked about how they pointed that out to her as an act of racism, her practicing racism against her black MOVE members, I think it is highly important just noting that tendency in terms of how victims of racism, how we treat other whites versus how we treat other victims of racism. That white identification, white validation, wanting that love and acceptance, even the presence of a single white or a group of individuals classified as white, where there are documented reports, accusations that MOVE members threatened other black MOVE members, assaulted other black MOVE members because they violated rules or did something that, was judged that was something that they should not have done. There are reports that this allegedly happened, that even some of the black MOVE members went to the police because they were threatened, assaulted, beaten by other black MOVE members. I thought it was extremely telling that this didn't happen when she was practicing racism against her other MOVE members, that according to what C.O.W.S, Africa, according to what she revealed, her testimony, she said that they recognized that she was so weak and brittle and that they didn't want her to leave. She would have left, that they had come at her very aggressively, that they were very patient and nice in how they spoke with her in pointing out that she was practicing racism and treating her hounds better than she was treating her fellow black MOVE members. That is astounding and might be reason enough, without even going into all the details, in terms of why it is a astronomical error anytime, more than just an error. It is an act of racism when you have these white infiltrators joining non-white organizations that are designed to pursue justice to end racism, white supremacy. It is never, 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 for any reason, a good idea. It is not leading towards problem solving at all. It is going in the opposite direction every time. I cannot think of a situation where that is not the case. I will stop there. We will get to the next audio segment. Again, that was the longest segment. All of the rest of the clips are significantly shorter, as you will see. Next segment, this is when we ask Sue Africa about it being logical to think of her not as a veteran MOVE member who's gone to prison and done all of this in order to achieve liberation and justice on the planet, to think of her as a likely race soldier. We will hear her response, Context of White Supremacy.
People believe in.
Okay.
We don't believe in any kind of prejudice.
Hang on 1 second. I wanted to hop in. That with the analogy and how it was explained with the animals, I just wanted to insert, this is what white men and white women have done to black people. That is something I try to make sure we state correctly on the broadcast.
I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you.
Moving back to your
I said I agree with you.
Oh, right. I know. Moving back to your experience, I started the question. I asked if it's logical, because I didn't hear an answer to that. I wanted to know if it's logical that me being a black person, that I suspect you even now, after what you just shared about, pointing out and recognizing how you had this, what you call superiority, which I would say was ways that you practiced racism, white supremacy. Do you think it's logical for me to suspect that you right now, August 8, 2016, still could be functioning as a racist white supremacy in some way, shape, form? Do you think it's logical?
I absolutely understand. Your mistrust. I wouldn't expect you to trust me.
Is it logical? No, is it logical for me to suspect that you could still be functioning as a racist? That seems like a yes or no. Is it logical what I just said, that I would suspect you of still being a racist?
When you say logical, what do you mean by logical? Is it logical that I could be? No, it's not logical that I could be, because I'm a MOVE member and I believe in life. I don't believe in prejudice of any kind against any form of life, and I have credentials here.
Okay,
I have credentials. We have a saying in MOVE: you don't trust a person, you trust their application of MOVE law. Okay. You trust the work that you have seen them do.
Okay, but for me as a black male victim of white supremacy, when you said that I'm a white woman and that even after I was a member of the MOVE organization, there have still been times, more than you've told us, where you were still acting out your sense of superiority in what I would say is you were practicing racism, white supremacy. You just testified to that. So there is a record of you belonging to this organization and agreeing with the principles of John Africa, but still practicing racism. That's how I would say it. So is it on that basis?
I don't. I think everybody in this organization would agree. And, there was a very famous man called Herman Ferguson from down south, North Carolina, and he really did not like white people. And he came to our events and he got very familiar with me, and he said, "Pam, I don't like white people, but I love Sue Africa."
Okay,
because
that's great and all, but I just want to say, as a black person, that's fine if you have a lot of other black people that you've been around that they, as character witnesses, would say that their experience with you, they like you, and that you're not racist. That's fine and everything, but I'm just on logic. I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. You said that it's not logical to suspect that you could still be a racist 2016.
No, because I don't believe in racism anymore.
Okay.
I did until I was confronted with all these examples and pushed to be honest. See, the thing about MOVE people is we believe in the personal revolution. We don't believe that we can get in anybody's face and tell anybody what's right unless we are demonstrating that example. So we have been undergoing a very serious personal revolution. where we are pushed to always look at ourselves and deal with ourselves, not divert to other people. Deal with ourselves and the problems that this reform system put on us. So I can say at this point, I'm pretty confident that I'm not a racist.
Okay. I do have another question about, because I think there have been other whites who have joined the MOVE organization. You can correct me on that, but I do want to make sure I just state for the record that I do, Gus T Renegade, still suspect that Sioux Africa could be practicing racism, white supremacy right now, even within this conversation. In fact, I will say, any white person that claims they have an understanding and they're willing to speak honestly about racism, and they tell you that it's not logical or there's something invalid, incorrect about you suspecting even them, regardless of what their resume looks like, regardless of how many character witnesses and black people, non-white people they can produce to say this is an A-OK white person, that white person should still be able to say, hey, given everything that's happened, it's totally logical and you're being intelligent for suspecting, thinking I am a racist.
I told you, Gus, that I understand why you don't trust me. I thoroughly understand that, and I ain't mad,
you said it's not logical.
But you do not understand the power of John Africa's teaching and the kind of push that MOVE people get to be real, to be sincere, and to deal with their problems. And I wouldn't expect you to understand that. I wouldn't expect you to understand that.
That could be true, but you did, when I asked the question, you said it's not logical for you to suspect me of being a racist, and then you gave your explanation why, and I'm just saying that's the type of thing that I expect from a racist white supremacist.
We're getting hung up on this word logical. I think we're getting hung up on this word logical.
I think it could be that you could be practicing racism right now with some of the dialogue. Context of white supremacy. Moment of silence for Herman Ferguson. Ashe, he passed away 2 years ago. They're doing the recognitions and what have you for Michael Brown, which I'm not saying is incorrect at all. I'm just saying that the system of white supremacy devours, extinguishes the lives of large numbers of black people on a constant basis. There would just be perpetual memorials in recognizing the black people that we have lost worldwide as a result of the system of white supremacy. But he transitioned in 2014. And just getting back to what I said during the previous segment, she said boldly, with some gumption, with conviction, I got credentials, nigger. Who do you think you are talking to Sioux Africa about me being a racist? What are you talking about? Do you know the number of black people that would come up and testify and tell you that you are no good, dirty so-and-so up here talking crazy to me? Anyway, we will move right ahead to the next segment. I'm sure there are other things that could be pointed out there as well, but we will keep it moving. Next segment. This is Sioux Africa talking about the different numbers of good white folk who support the MOVE organization and what they do. And this is when we start to get the beginnings of, we do have a system of racism, but it is no good black people's fault, like Wilson Good and President Obama and the no good niggers on the continent who sold you all over here in the first place, and the long list of black people who are to blame for this problem of racism. Next segment, context of white supremacy. So the question is, you're saying in response to any individual who would say, logically speaking, we don't really need white people coming to join black organizations regardless of how much value you find in the information, and this is something that's going towards justice, that we just
I'm not saying that.
You're not saying You're not saying that you find value in
See, first of all,
I feel like you're doing a lot of interrupting here. I'm not really able to get out my questions clearly, and then you're talking for a long time and not answering the question. I'd appreciate it if you could just let me finish, and then you can respond.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm paraphrasing. You value the teachings of John Africa. It's been helpful in your life, your worldview, how you behave. Fine. You're saying that for individuals who raise a concern, submitting logic, saying that we really don't need white people like you coming to this organization that is predominantly black, that's not needed. We've had a lot of that before, and it has not helped solve this problem. It would be better if you're sincere take whatever information, the teachings of John Africa, you could take that and go work with your people, as you stated earlier. You could go work with white people to help them stop doing many of the unjust, cruel things that they do.
No, I couldn't.
Forms. Why could you not do that?
I do work with white people, but see, first of all, your first mistake is referring to MOVE as a black organization. You don't ever hear MOVE people refer to our organization as a black organization.
It was predominantly
we are the organization of life.
It was predominantly
the newspaper,
black members.
The newspaper.
Black? This is important. Was it predominantly black members when you joined this organization?
Oh yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was predominantly, but the news media exaggerated that because we had quite a few white people. In fact, Don Glassy, who was white, was the first MOVE member. The first MOVE member. Okay? John Africa did not believe in division of life, categorization of life, status. All John Africa believed in life, and that's what I believe in. There's no way I could leave MOVE and go out there and work with white people and be able to carry on my belief because I wouldn't be in MOVE anymore. I wouldn't be in MOVE anymore. And I do work with white people. We have a lot of white supporters. A lot of white supporters
do you have a number,
that
like
we work with
more than
closely.
100?
I work with closely.
Do you have a number? Like how many? More than 100? More than 1,000?
Yes, absolutely. We have so many European white MOVE supporters. So many.
And what do they
We
do
have a lot
specifically?
here.
What do they do
a lot in
specifically?
Philadelphia. You will never see the news media give that attention. You will never see it. That's why they always call us a black nationalist organization. We have never been a black nationalist organization. Never.
I didn't say that you are a black nationalist organization, but what specifically do your white supporters do?
You keep breaking up. I couldn't understand that last part.
I said, what specifically do your...
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I said, what specifically do your white supporters do?
Well, they do what the black supporters do. They raise support. They deal with the parole issues. They garner people to work on that. They go to the prisons and visit the prisoners. They write articles and post them up on the internet. I mean, they do all those things. I mean, yesterday at the program, there was just as many white people there as there was black people.
How many people were present yesterday?
Oh, I'd say about 100.
So about 50 of them were white people?
Yep.
Fascinating. Did they, what did the white members, supporters, what did they do yesterday specifically to be supportive?
Well, they helped set up the program. They spoke. We had Delbert and Janine, who are the Move 9 call-in. They asked them questions. One white supporter who works for Food Not Bombs, she brought free food for people that had traveled from New York and, Boston and other areas. They do what we all do.
Okay.
Ask questions, network. We had 2 white supporters come all the way from Colorado. And they specifically, they're what I call techno heads. They specifically use things which I don't understand because I'm not involved with cell phones. But they create some type of apps and different things to generate support and get things out to mass amount of people so they hear about the Move 9 internationally. That's what they do. Okay. That's what they do.
Context of white supremacy. Fascinating. Lots of white helpers, quote unquote. That was accusation number 1 that Gus referenced the MOVE group as a black organization, an accusation that she made repeatedly that if you hear in the audio is patently false. I did not call the MOVE organization a black organization. I said it was predominantly black, which she conceded repeatedly, which the evidence, if you look, I would say for pretty much any era, it is a predominantly black organization. I did not, however, refer to it as a black organization. I think later she changed it to a black nationalist organization. I certainly did not refer to it as that either. There are different reports. You can go online and check out, get more about Donald Galassi, his last name Glassy, if you are so interested to hear what he has to say about this group. He is no longer associated with the group, according to the reports that I've checked out. I'll post a few of them if you are interested. We have 3 more segments. Again, these are shorter than the first segment that we got, and then we will get to the callers. So this segment, where we get more of the blaming black people for the continued existence of racism, white supremacy. I think we're getting close to where we get to some of the exchanges that she had with the callers as well. This is, again, Sue Africa, her visit last week to the context of white supremacy.
Isn't because I noticed when you were talking about MOVE, MOVE was about, not seeing color, not creating division, and, it's not about you being white or black. Doesn't making the fight against white supremacy about all people and then about white involvement being innocent or neutral, doesn't that assume white innocence and in turn support notions of white saviorism and put black people besides John Africa at danger by doing this in terms of organization methodology? And that's it. That's my last question.
Well, I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I think the organization has been extremely effective with John Africa's strategy at going up against the system. And I mean, Wilson Goode was black. You do know that, right? He's the one that was ordered to drop the bomb. You do know that, right?
He was the mayor of Philadelphia at the time, 1985, when the house
Philadelphia was black. Yeah, he took full responsibility. Took full responsibility.
Wilson Goode.
We know why he did it. We know why he did it. And
Wilson Goode. This is what I've been saying. Like sometimes your responses, like they're not related to the question. I think you did say that you were having some trouble understanding the question. The caller in Canada, can you succinctly maybe restate it, and we'll see if Sue Africa understands it a little bit better.
Okay, I'll restate it. So when we sort of say to see beyond color, and, when I sort of looked at the way you responded when Gus asked you about, white people going to white people to change racism rather than working with black people, doesn't that create sort of white saviorism by insisting that black people have to work with white people in order to create change?
We don't even pose that kind of question or information to people. We just work with people and go at the system. The fact that the system is, controlled by white people, but then you have people like Colin Powell and Wilson Goode who are black on the outside but are white on the inside because Obama. How are you going to get past Obama? The only reason they put him in office is because they got him controlled and he is a slave to status and money and all that. See, that's what we attack.
That is very important.
We don't.
That is very important what was just said. I just want to get our next caller, but all of that at the end of the day about President Obama, they control him. The they that is unnamed in that, I suspect, are white people. The caller that dialed in from New York, Thomas in New York, did you have a question for Sue Africa?
Okay. My second question to you. You keep talking about it's not the people, it's not black people, it's not white people, it's the system. And I just wanted to know exactly what people are in control of that system.
I agree that white people are in control of the system, but if people like Obama,
damn you, Obama,
and Wilson Goode and Colin Powell, if they are going along with it, then They white. They basically white, okay? I mean, you keep wanting to call color, but I'm talking about it's a way of thinking.
Wow.
It's a way of thinking. And what's behind that whiteness is the money.
Wow. All right, can I just get my last question in, please? Last question for you, Mrs. Sue. I can't call no white person.
No, I think you misunderstood what I said. I said Colin Powell, Obama. Do you see? Okay, go ahead.
Wait, I get you. I get it's all the black people's fault. I got you. My question to you is, what is your definition of racism, white supremacy? And I'll mute my line. Thank you.
What is our definition of racism?
Yours specifically.
Racism. Mine specifically? Racism is anything that tries to kill off the life in people. Whether it's, against the race of life, the race of people, I mean, that's as best as I could say. We see it as a way of thinking. We don't see it as a color. We see it as the way of thinking. Yeah, because, if you had heard me earlier, when we were talking about this black dog fighter up there in Rochester, he was a racist.
Was this a black person? Was this a black person?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes, it was. It was a black person.
Of course. The person that called in, last four digits, 9401. Did you have a question for Sue Africa?
Oh, my God. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, I tuned in a little bit late, so I got like a piece of an anecdote, and she said something about the person being very raw and black, and I would like her to clarify what she means by that.
I think that was
okay, what I mean is real. White people, at least raw and black, Yeah, black people, this particular, sometimes you have black people that are sophisticated. Birdie was very raw. She is very down to earth and pure and outspoken and honest and, didn't bite her tongue. Real, something that the majority of white people, at least where I come from, are not like that. They're not like that. They're very, subdued and, sterile. Did you hear me when I said? Did you hear me when I said she's very honest and out in the open, out front, outspoken, not devious.
Context of white supremacy. I could have taken time to emphasize, explain that it is not that we are focused on quote-unquote color per se, because white people are not the color white. It is them classifying themselves as white, and what that means as a political organization, a terrorist organization, to dominate, subjugate, abuse everybody in the known universe whom they classify as not white. However, I generally would not take the time to explain that to an individual classified as white. You know more about this than I do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that you don't understand what racism is, how it works, what it means to be classified as white. I'm not going to do that, and I would not suggest, encourage that other victims of racism do that, should you find yourself talking with a white person who is saying things like that or pretending that they don't understand what racism, white supremacy is. We heard lots, and that to me is fascinating that we get this many anecdotes where she's talking about she is a victim of racism, other whites are victims of racism, these black people, numerous black people, Colin Powell, President Obama, Wilson Goode, some random black person in Pennsylvania or wherever they happen to be in the Northeast who's fighting dogs. He also is practicing racism, abusing this stuff. We get all of these melanated folks who are racists, but she No, I am not a racist. I am a credentialed freedom fighter with the MOVE organization. Last two clips. This first one, these are all callers here where I do address, you heard the individual talking in the background, that is her suspected racist husband who was contributing. I did say something about that in the background. I thought that was highly incorrect because he was contributing to her responses and what have you. He was not invited on the program. And in my view, that's just another instance of racism, white supremacy being practiced. But we'll get to that and some of the other callers dialing in with their questions as well. Second to last segment from Sue Africa's visit to the cows.
Okay, I have one more question for you, and that's it. Why is it when you get asked directly about white people's complicity or, how they participate and how they're in control in the system of white supremacy, why do you deflect the question and place the blame on a black person? Is that how you practice racism? And that's my question.
How did I do that? How did I do that? Can you tell me exactly how I did that? You mean when I mentioned good? Or when I mentioned Obama? Yeah, I can.
Obama, right, and the mayor of Philadelphia, right, and that dog fighter,
and the black people in Africa, the black people in Africa who sold the slaves.
They are a victim. Because they are a victim of the training of the system. I wasn't blaming them. I'm blaming their training, how they were taught. Because when the black dog fighter met up with true clarity, he said, I don't own that dog anymore. I don't own him. Just like the slave master said they owned the black man. I don't own this dog. This dog is life. He's free. And he thanked John Africa for clearing that up for him. And he said he would never fight another dog again. He met with clarity. And he was cleared up. But he was a victim of training and education in the system.
Everybody come there once they hear.
That is. I'm just sharing this.
Can I ask one last question?
I just want to say this. Yes, ma'am. You can ask your question. I just want to get this out just for the record. Generally, when I talk to a white person, if I'm interviewing them on the program, I would not have somebody else like contributing to the answers. It sounds like there's somebody in the background who is like contributing answers and what have you, and that is it's kind of an annoyance to have them contribute because I don't know who the person is, and it seems like they're adding on the same of your answers. And it also, I suspect that this might be a black person. That too, just if I'm talking to a white person, it is.
No, this is actually my husband who is, not a black person. Okay.
Oh, okay. Is he a white person?
He was telling me to put out.
Is your husband a white person?
Yeah, he's a white.
Okay.
He's Spanish, but he's a white Spanish person. He's as white as me, but he was simply telling me to put out that example that he did 13 years in prison.
Well, I mean, that makes it even worse if this is just another person that I would suspect of being a racist who's just contributing on the side, because I don't know who this person is. He was not invited on the program as a guest. It's kind of an annoyance to have an additional participant, and I don't know if you know.
Well, he does not have to be here, but, I really don't understand which way you're coming. I have come to you honest, putting out solid, good information about John Africa and MOVE, and it just seems like you laying in the cut here trying to prove that I'm a racist, and that's all you're concerned with.
I'm not even asking questions.
That's all you're concerned with.
I'm not even asking questions right now. The listeners are asking questions. The female caller said she had an additional question. In fact, I'm not even having any other response to that. I appreciate you sharing some of your time with us, but these are earnest questions that I and the listeners have. The female caller, did you have another question for Sue Africa?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I just want to know, do you think white people are victims of racism and white supremacy?
Victims?
Did you hear my question?
Of
racism and white supremacy?
Do I think that white people are victims of supremacy? Is that what you're saying?
White supremacy.
Is that what you're saying?
Victims of racism, white supremacy. Victims of racism, white supremacy.
really know how to answer that. I think that white people have been trained to feel superior, and that makes them victims, but I don't know about victims of white supremacy. I mean, I guess a white supremacist would probably see me as an enemy and come at me. I could see that.
Fascinating. The person that dialed in, last four digits, 2534. 2534, did you have a question for Sue Africa?
Good evening, Gus. May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Gus. Good evening to all the callers, listeners. Good evening, Miss Sue.
Hello.
My question for you is, have you listened to, have you heard of Frances Cress Welsing and her theory on, or her definition of racism, white supremacy?
No.
And
no, I've never heard of that.
My next question is,
what I wanted to ask the guest specifically is, why are you so vulgar?
I don't understand what you're saying. All I see this is a diversion for real. You know, I use certain words to describe certain situations.
Let me ask the direct question. Why are you using
vulgarity?
So much profanity?
You know, this entire radio program has been nothing but a setup to try to point the finger at me as being a racist. And I suspect, Gus, that you must be involved with the police here, because there is a racist diversionary movement going on right now, right here. Because every person that has called here has tried to attack me. So obviously, y'all hate white people, and the very fact that I've been in MOVE for 42 years, setting an example that not only my brothers and sisters, but all kinds of black people from all kinds of black movements respect. You must be cops. You must be cops calling in here. You just must be trying to divert, you know, my energy and submerge my energy. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to stay on this line anymore and allow it, because you people are being used by this system to push racism. That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing right here. I don't even know why you invited me on this show. You're trying to use me as some kind of target. You don't give a fuck. Filth about MOVE people being in jail and being innocent. You don't care about what this system is doing to life. All you want to talk about is white people. And where is the solution in that? Where is the solution in that? You ain't got no goddamn solution. Filth. You ain't got no goddamn solution. John Africa got solution. He got solution. He talking about bringing people together to fight our common enemy, which is the goddamn industrialists. And you're right. I use words that are vulgar to describe a vulgar situation. And if you can't understand that, you're a loser. You're a loser. Because there have been very few people in the world that cannot understand that. You don't use a nice word to describe a profane situation. After everything this organization has been through, you're going to get on the air and talk some stupid nonsense about why are you so vulgar, Sue Africa. That is the most mundane, despicable, racist comment I have ever heard. And Gus, I don't know what your game plan here is. It's obviously you are being used to set something up here to divert people away from John Africa's information. So you're a cop. You just like talking to this radio man.
That's fascinating. But you did answer the question, his question about...
And all you can say is that's fascinating. You don't have no respect for Ramona Africa. You don't have no respect for Move people. You don't have no respect for the 11 people that were killed in that house. All you have been doing is using this show to take pot shots at me. You don't have no respect for Mumia Abu-Jamal. Mumia has never disrespected and treated me like this. Mumia has never disrespected me and treated me like this. And you say you support Mumia? You don't support Mumia. You don't support nothing right. This whole entire show has been nothing but a setup from beginning to end. That's all it's been.
The caller had
because you did. And I don't hear.
You did answer the caller's question. He said he did have one more question for you, because you did answer his question about the profanity. I think you explained it well. Caller, what was your other question?
I'm just amazed. You can move on to the next caller. Thanks a lot, Gus, for allowing me to be on the show, and good luck with everything, Miss Sue.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He was stupefied. Epic. 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 Shout to my man Bill Cosby. Epic. Epic. Epic moment in the history of the context of white supremacy. The only thing I will say about that, I said I can pinpoint right there. That was when I got my slushy. I said, you're going to be on here saying all that. I'm going to enjoy my slushy. If this is where we are, in 2016 on the plantation, I'm going to enjoy my slushy. I am not upset at all. I'm just going to sit back and let you say whatever you're going to say, and trust that people can use their brain computer to process what is happening. I found it extremely vital that once again, when we talk about whites being masters at being able to play the role of the victim, while she's doing all of her name calling, you're a cop, you're a loser, and that is the most racist comment I've ever heard. Now, this is coming from someone whose child died in a bombing in 1985, along with 10 other of her quote-unquote brothers and sisters, in addition to over 60 black-owned houses. And the most racist comment you've ever heard is someone asking why you are so vulgar. And that we are taking quote-unquote pot shots at her, whatever that means, by asking a question. Nobody accused her. Well, I did say that I suspect she was practicing racism, but that was quite a bit earlier in the broadcast. No, that caller did not call her any names. I didn't call her any names throughout any portion of the program. We're taking quote-unquote pot shots at her. I also think it's significant because the first time when I spoke with her, which was like 2 weeks ago, a week before the live broadcast, when I first called her, and she picked up the phone and she said, "Oh, is this Mumia?" And I said, "No, this is Gus with the cows." She was like, "Oh, wow, you sound just like Mumia." And I think we have talked before on the broadcast about how at times one of the ploys that racists will use is they can be nice. They can be complimentary. They will try to flatter you so that you will lower your guard. And to say, "Oh, man, you sound just like Mumia Abu-Jamal," and wow, and all of that. And then to come back and do the opposite. You have behaved, you've taken pot shots at me and treated me so poorly. Mumia would never do anything like this. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Mumia heard this. Mumia himself would castigate you for talking to me, a credentialed white woman, white member of MOVE, in this manner. And again, that's just where I say it's United Independent, even if that is the case. If any non-white person, if there are cows listeners right now who take the position that, hey, Sue Africa has done more to solving the problem of racism, white supremacy than 50 Gus T Renegades. Cool, and the gang. Make sure you call in to express that view. But at the end of the day, this is United Independent. We should all be thinking on our own, using the brain computer that the Creator gave us to make logical decisions, to process what we are hearing, seeing, thinking, to make the best possible decisions, to make logical conclusions, and then act on those decisions, what we think, information that our brain computer is giving to us. Epic. Again, shout out to my man Bill Cosby. Last segment. Another accusation where she accuses Gus T Renegade of lying. I was thoroughly enjoying my slushie at this point in the broadcast. Final segment, then we'll get to the caller. Sue Africa, Context of White Supremacy. Our caller in Michigan, did you have a question for Sue Africa? Caller in Michigan.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a quick question. I'm not sure if you guys addressed this or not. I missed a lot of the show. But who do you feel is most confused about racism, white supremacy, white people or non-white people, and why? And I'll mute myself.
I would say white people, because they're more indoctrinated by the system to see themselves as superior, and they don't even see that racism exists in them. You hear all the time white people say, oh, my best friends are black, or I dated a black man, or, and none of that has anything to do with them not being racist.
I just want to insert, I'm laughing, because that's exactly what you did today, in my opinion. That's exactly what you did today.
What? No, it is not what I did. No, it is not what I did. You are absolutely wrong about that, Gus. I did not do that today. Oh, no, I didn't. No, I did not. You're wrong about that. I said that my parents said that, and I was in shock when they said that to me, when they taught me all my life, don't judge a person by their color. Now, I never said that because I dated a black man that I wasn't a racist. I never said that. I told you I was a racist when I came in this organization, but I did not know it for a long time. And then when certain examples came out throughout the organization of me being superior and treating black people inferior, I started seeing that then. But I never said that I was not a racist because some of my best friends were black. I never said that. Never said that. I don't know what you're talking about here. Could you clarify yourself?
I might for listeners, but I don't feel like clarifying at this moment. I just want to try and get through some of the calls.
Well, that's because you can't, because you just lied on me, Gus. You just lied on me.
All right. I've been accused. The caller in retired firefighter in Florida, did you have a question for Sue Africa?
To the guests, would you say the only logical way that non-white people can trust a white person is when there's no longer a global system of racism and white supremacy?
I would say you're right about that. I would say you're right about that. Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
You said yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Do you hear me? Did you say yes?
Yes, I agree with you on that. You said, let me make sure I understood what you said because you broke up. He said, would I agree
I didn't break up. I didn't break up. You said yes.
I'm listening.
That's all I have, Gus.
I can't
That's all I have, Gus, and I'm going to mute my line.
Context of white supremacy. I was thoroughly enjoying my slushie at that point in the conversation. It was not going to be perturbed by pretty much anything she did at that point. You have to go back and listen to the archive if you want to hear the entire broadcast. That is not everything that was shared on the program. We had some other people that called in. Ross called in, asked some good questions, some of the other listeners. So that's not the entirety, but, that's a pretty generous sampling, so you get the idea of what went down on the program. I think I did on that broadcast because I didn't explain why I said that she did exactly what she just tossed out in terms of saying that whites will frequently say, oh, I have a black friend, or I have a black boyfriend, or we, adopted an African. So, I'm certainly not racist. What are you talking about? We go to KFC every other week and, even eat with some niggers. That, in my view, she did exactly that during the program. She was just able to toss out some, even more well-known black people to say, Mumbi Abu Jamal and Herman Ferguson thinks I'm the coolest white person ever, and he hates white people. She just did that with, as I said, more well-known black people. I did clarify later in the program after she exited, why I said that. I just was not going to explain it to her. At that particular moment, which is something that I've done consistently on the program, not every time, but consistently I will do. I will take this moment to point out, caller in Michigan asked some months back, I think just before the summer started, some of the strategies that I use, particularly when talking to other victims of racism, non-white people. One of the strategies that I use is to make an effort consistently, whether I'm on air or not, to not curse, and it's not out of any sense of morality or because I certainly, have done enough time cursing and using foul words. I certainly have used more than my share in my time on the planet. However, what I have noticed within the system of white supremacy is that you have a lot of victims who, are stressed. This is constant terrorism against black people, and I think frequently we're just so accustomed to being talked to in a very derogatory manner and having people insult us all the time that, at least it's been my experience, that in having discussions about racism, frequently you have victims of racism who don't agree, who have a different perspective. Certainly we all have different experiences and we have read different information and what have you. So we just have a different viewpoint on this problem and what should be done to try to solve this problem as soon as possible. Sometimes those exchanges can get heated, a bit contentious. It's just been my experience that if we can work to not curse when talking to other victims of racism, even if I'm talking to a white person, to not curse, that can help things be a bit more courteous. It can keep things, even if there's disagreement, from it getting to a point where we're being discourteous and it ends up being conflict. We can disagree without it being conflict. I particularly employ this strategy even when I'm talking to whites, because it's been my experience, if you are just sticking to whatever your code is in terms of how you see what you think racism, white supremacy is, how it works, questions that you ask, what you want to say or what you want to articulate when you're talking about racism, it's been my experience that if you can do that and remain patient, it is the whites who will get emotional, tacky, trashy. They will be the ones that end up being foul-mouthed, rude, name-calling, and that ends up having a greater impact on victims of racism who are watching when they see this and they see the racists are the ones who are being nasty and rude. And you are just being calm, you're being courteous, you're not yelling, you're not shouting. It's still, sir, ma'am, no need to use profanities. I can, keep it G-rated regardless, even if we do not agree. It's been my experience that is substantially more effective. That's really just a business decision so that you can get the highest return when you're out talking and having exchange. I think that would have sounded radically different if I had been saying, well, I'm going to go right back at her and filth flooring and no, who do you think you are? No good, dirty. I think it would have been a dramatically different exchange, and I think victims of racism, particularly victims of racism who are more confused, I think they would have heard that dramatically different than the way that it played out. And even every last one of our callers, whether they were in this segment, the review that we have today, or if you go back and listen to everybody who participated, everyone was calm, codified. They asked their question. Nobody was rude. Nobody name-called. Even when she came back, that's the dumbest question I've ever been asked. That's the most racist. Nobody came back and shouted at her name. My next quote, they just went business, business, business. Outstanding illustration of counter-racist questioning, being calm, being cool, even when racists predictably are tacky and trifling. We will get to the phone lines. The number to dial is 641-715-3640. The code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. That number again, 564-943#. 943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. I want to make sure we get everybody in on the line. It's probably better that things worked out the way that they did, because since there did seem like there was some technical issues happening a week ago, it might have been difficult in terms of folks sharing. But this time around, I hope, at least I have not heard we're having any technical issues. So people, I hope, had an easier time hearing C.O.W.S. Africa in the exchange. So probably worked out for the best all the way around. To make sure we get everybody, I'm just going to go through in order that people dial. Or actually, I won't even do it that way. What I'll do is just the first 5 people that dialed in, we'll do it that way. And then I'll just add as we go along. To make sure that we get everybody. If you kind of take 5 minutes, same way we generally do things on the compensatory call-in, if you could take a max of 5 minutes for whatever comments you want to share, and then we'll move through and get everybody. And then if you have additional comments that you need more than 5, once everybody has shared, then you can make whatever additional comments that you have. But this way we'll make sure that we get everyone who dialed in. So the first 5 people who dialed in with a hand up, your lines are open. If you have comments on C.O.W.S. Africa's performance, you should be with us.
Can I be heard?
Thomas in New York, proceed.
Okay, I apologize, Roz. Good evening to you, Roz. Good evening, Gus. Good evening to all. I think this show was, I was so waiting for this show, and it was even better than I expected. I think that she was highly refined, level 10 racist. You know, like if anyone ever asks questions whether or not all whites are racist, this is the episode. I mean, you can't find a white person with more credentials. She's more credit. You know, she could talk about her brothers and sisters. She's a member of MOVE. Her brother's in prison. Her sister's is in prison. She did 12 years. She got beat up by the police. I mean, she's been in this group for 40 years, and she lost a kid and still come here and practice high-level racism. I think the only white person she put out there was Rizzo and one of his captains. That was the only 2 she talked bad about the whole show. Now, wasn't she originally married to a black member of MOVE? But it seemed to me like she alluded to the person that she's married to now is the guy Carlos she kept talking about from MOVE, and that's the person that was in the background talking, a white Spanish MOVE member. And, I mean, she practiced racism in so many ways. I had to listen to the archive because I was laughing so hard during the show. It was just, like, so funny because it was like, no, she's not going to do it. Yeah, she did it. Yeah, she did it. It's like she was proficient. You know, she was better than Crystal Tyler. I think, you know, that was one of the best shows that you had on, just because of who it was. If it was anyone else, you know, it would just be, you know, tacky, you know. But this is someone who could go around any black people. I mean, she's more credited than Hillary Clinton. I mean, I lost a kid. I was a member of MOVE. We were bombed. I mean, what black person is going to give her any pushback, you know, which is why I think it was good that we all did. I think everyone's questions was contentious. And we stuck to, we want to know about this racism thing, you know, all this, your kid and, you know, your brother and you got beat up and yeah, whatever, you know. How, you know, she would not admit to anything about white people at all. And I'll mute my line for that. Thank you very much. Oh, also, this white person started the organization she admitted to. I don't recall ever hearing that before. So I'm just very interested in finding out more information. I'm glad that I went back and listened and got this guy's name, and I'm going to look him up.
Donald Glassy, if folks are so interested, there are a lot of articles where you can read about his MOVE involvement online. Donald Glassy, Glassy, Donald Glassy. Roz, were you going to comment, sir?
Yes, sir. Greetings to you, Gus. Greetings to Thomas and all the other callers. Wow, this is probably the standout interview. I totally agree with Thomas when it comes to interviewing white people. The way when Thomas was running down her credentials as far as her being a part of the organization, losing her child, being attacked, that sounds like she sounds like a gang member. I've heard Kristen Bloods run off, their resume and how many people they lost and all the stuff they did, and it's just crazy how she came across, and her racism was just incredible. I thought it was one of the most brilliant displays of racism ever. When she kept saying, believe me, she sounded like Donald Trump. When Donald Trump in his speeches say, trust me, he'll make a statement and say, trust me. She would say, believe me. I'm like, she sounds just like Donald Trump. That's one thing. Also, when she said she was committed to giving information to her people, I just think that when you have white people in black organizations, or organizations that are majority black, or however you want to put it, I just think that they're all a provocateurs or have the potential to be. So when she talks about giving information to her people, that just sounds like she's giving them racist white supremacist information for them to refine their practice of white supremacy. I found it very telling, too, that when she was getting beaten and the other two women lost their children, that she said she was so strong, and like the black female caller said that day, that she made it seem like the other two people were weak and that there was something exceptionally different about her that made her keep her child and survive the incident. But yet, when she discussed early in her relationship with Moo being called out on her racism, she was weak and fragile, and they didn't want her to run back home to her lily white family and go back to her quote-unquote white life. So, like I've always said, the term racism or anything to do with racism is like kryptonite for white people. The moment you say that, they become fragile, they get brittle, they fall apart, and they want to run back home to their white parent. So I just found that to be a very telling act of racism as well. And I also found it interesting when she said that when you brought up the fact that even though she has her credentials, that you still suspected her of practicing racism, which I don't consider an accusation. You didn't accuse her of anything. You said, I suspect that you could be practicing racism. So if she took that in that way, obviously white people in their semantics says a lot. But when you did bring that up, she agreed. Well, not agree, but she alluded to her agreement by saying she understood, and then she turned around and said it's not logical because it's her. So she's very, to me, she's even more dangerous than Tim Wise, because, I mean, say what you want about Tim Wise, at least he's not in any black organizations, even though he's going into black churches and black groups to sell his nonsensical crap. The truth is she actually joined an organization, which makes it a much more refined situation. I was telling Thomas that I totally can see where Ramona Africa would be confused by that, because when someone's so-called in the trenches with you and you see them going through something, getting abused, losing their child, all of these different things, it will endear you to them in a way in which a person who's not a part of that organization would not be endeared to you. So the sheer amount of confusion I could see, like, I think probably the black people in MOVE are probably some of the most confused people ever, because even when she made the statement, I'm about to end it now, but when she made the statement about you can't speak about something negative without using profanity, then John Africa should have been calling white people every name in the book then, because anything to do with white people is racism, white supremacy, and if her definition of racism, white supremacy is the destruction of life, then John Africa should have been calling every white person every name in the book every day, all day. And with that, I'll mute my line. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Indeed. Before we nap, I forgot that quite a few people actually wrote their comments in, like immediately when this program aired. So I will try to sprinkle those in because I said I would as we go along. So comment number one, a person wrote in, I'll be front and center early next week when the discussion of the topic of Sue Africa begins. I was really surprised when Ramona Africa said that Sue was down for the cause, in quotes, and that she experienced more hell than anyone, in quotes. I was willing to hear Sue Africa out. But when that suspected racist came on your program, I thought at least three things. Number one, why was she conveniently in jail when the Move House and entire participant neighborhood was decimated in Philadelphia? Number two, why was she so willing to blame black people for the demise of Move and was never willing to say that any white person was to blame for Move's condition in the row houses that would have provided context for their demise? And finally, number three, why would she enlist the personalities of black people to co-sign for her degenerate character when she even characterized me as being a cop, when she was the true agent. Inquiring minds want to know. These are questions that need answers. We'll get to the rest of the comments as we roll along. Other folks that we have not heard from, did you all have comments?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is Rob chiming in from Milwaukee. Thanks for the program. Greetings to the host and the caller. I did write in. Was very disturbed when she was on the program. I was asking what was the constructive result from having her on the program, and hearing some of the highlights from the program. I totally get it. The audio was a bit distorted, and I think that's where some of the irritation came from. But yeah, she was very suspect, and I wrote 3 things that stood out to me. She said that she was doing sit-ups an hour after she gave birth. I find that highly suspect. And she said, talking about her physical strength and, how she was able to do that because of the teachings from John Africa. And then she said that Black people were enslaved because they were so physically strong. They were just strong. The strong niggas. And saying that I think it was surrounding a situation where she used the girl coat for her dogs, and she was saying that if they came at me like that, then they knew I was gonna, run home to mommy and daddy and, whatever. Like, in that statement, she knew that by her being a white person that the niggas was, so-called privileged to even just have her in their presence. And then to your question that you asked in the beginning, her voice sounds like a Black person. I think that she makes a conscious effort to sound like that. I think they call it code switching. And I think that when she, probably get around her white family, man, that she enacts the code switching. And thanks for taking the call. I mute my line.
Appreciate the response to the question. Sprinkling in response number 2 before we get our next caller. This person wrote in, thank you for hosting the program Sue Africa. I'm looking forward to the follow-up breakdown of Sue Africa's behavior because I think it will be very fruitful to further study and analyze the nuances and idiosyncrasies of racist, white supremacist behavior. I walked away from last night's program with a much better understanding about white psychology. Sue Africa's behavior on last night's call was the epitome of racist white supremacist tactics. I maintain that she was indeed practicing racism, evidenced with her use of red herrings, throwing around her so-called credentials, and her being offended. I couldn't contain my laughter when she yelled on the phone, "I got credentials in this." I was shocked that she would even try to claim you are working for the government and or police, the ad hominem argument. At some point during the conversation, I began to wonder if she was within her right mind, but that could just be her practicing racism yet again. I also felt sad for all the non-white MOVE members who probably accepted her because I believe that, like most of us, they lacked a proper definition and understanding of what racism, white supremacy, or lacked a proper definition and understanding of racism, white supremacy to critique her by. She is lucky for that because she wouldn't have gotten far if they had. It was perfect timing for the program because I had just completed the painful experience of listening to both of Crystal Tyler's episodes. Second reference for Miss Tyler Cowbell. Sue Africa sounds a lot like Tyler. They both seem to have a hidden expressed envy of Black women. They both lusted after Black men, and they both needed the approval and acceptance by Black people. They also expressed a dislike for white weakness. White people don't struggle. White people don't communicate or express themselves like Black people, etc. Neither of these white women had a definition for racism. Neither of these white women had a plan or strategy. Both these white women had children with Black men, and both these white women used the Black struggle for liberation as a means to, number one, justify their meaningless existence, and number two, to get praise and validation from unsuspecting black victims of racism, white supremacy. It also saddened me that this white woman is walking around with her white husband, usurping and lying on the movement. It may not have been a black nationalist group, but it was undeniably black. End of commentary. Other folks that we have not heard from have comments they wanted to get in?
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon to the callers, the listeners, and to the host. To comment on her voice or her quote-unquote black scent, black inflections in her voice, it prompted me to Google her image. So I wanted to see what she looked like. And interestingly enough, the first thing that came up about her, I don't know if you knew, but she's dubbed as the Minister of Confrontation. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I think that has a lot to do with not just her delivery, not just her tone of speech, but the way how she monopolized the conversation when you were talking, when people asked her questions. And honestly, listening to the show, it was quite irritating. It really grated my nerves because that accent, that inflection, whatever that is that white women do, or even white people do when they are surrounded by black people. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that gives them a level of cred. I don't know if black people take them more serious when they speak in such types of tones. I thought it was also interesting, too, how she mentioned something about the organization not being a black organization and that there were equal percentage of white people who contributed to the movement. And my question, I was wondering, was, okay, so if this was not a predominantly black organization, if it was not a black organization, then why did she have to take on the moniker of Sue Africa? Why couldn't she just remain Sue, whatever her birth name was? There were a couple of other things I wanted to add it, but they kind of miss me at the moment, so hopefully I'll be able to contribute a little bit more later through the discussion. Thank you for listening.
For sure. I also thought the same point I thought was a brilliant and important one. This is not a black organization. Why the surname Africa? Maybe Africa's not supposed to be associated with black people either. Other folks that we have not heard from, people we have not heard from, if you all had commentary.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I had to Google her too. I Googled her when we were on the actual program because not her dialect, but just how ruthless she was with her wording, and she was just so aggressive and just combative. Oh my goodness, who isn't it? I saw her, so I could understand why she would have been manic depressant because she's very ruthless on the eye. So I could see her clashing with white males, so she would have to go to a black anything organization, something like that. And then with that kind of organization, and she looked hippie-ish too, so with that kind of organization, and if a white guy was the first person to jump in, it had to be based around black issues. It couldn't have just been just some clubhouse because it wouldn't make sense to have a movement in the first place. So, and I noticed how she did use those rough words, all those curse words, but when you're hanging around black people, especially in those times, we think it's cool when you curse. And then once you get to cursing, it's like you're proving that you're, one of us, or you're so down, like Mrs. Africa, Ramona Africa was stating that she was down for the cause. So she's basically barking and carrying on and being dominant, trying to show that she's down for this cause. But the cause isn't a cause because she just said it wasn't about blacks, it's about everybody hugging. So what was the real purpose? It sounds like her and all the other white people were just kind of in there to make sure nothing happened in the movement. And I also noticed how she would just keep going around in circles with words. I know she must have did that in that movement also, confusing already confused black people. And with her being so rude and then pretending like, oh, I'm unconsciously rude. Oh, I'm just unconscious. None of us white people know that this is how we conduct. It's white people are victims. I'm a victim. I've been victim. And she was just me. And then when we're, twisting it around a bit, it's, wait a minute. I've always been a victim amongst black people, and now you guys are all of a sudden making it to where I'm not a victim. So she just seems offended that she couldn't play those same games that she normally plays with black people, because we really want just to be accepted by white people, the majority of us. So she really did fit in, especially with that foolish dialect. Okay, that's all. I'll mute my line. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Other folks that we have not heard from, you should be with us as well.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I'll be brief. Like the other callers, I did laugh when I heard her tirade, and it's just really interesting. Oh yeah, she is blatantly practicing racism. It just goes back to, yes, other white people racist. Yes, white people racist, but not me. I mean, we can go down the entire list: Timothy, Trepanier, Dan Carvey. I mean, we can go on and on. And it's just interesting how she accuses you of being a cop, but she mentioned Donald Glassy, but she didn't mention that Donald Glassy became an informant for the police against other MOVE members. He ratted out all of his quote-unquote black brothers and sisters to save himself from weapons charges. He didn't say, no, I'm down for the cause. I'm gonna stick this out. Give me all the prison time you want. No, he just got quote-unquote mighty white and ratted out some black people. But yet she called you a cop. And just the idea. She's a menace of confrontation, but she's a menace of confrontation. She took all of this physical abuse, verbal abuse, but can't deal with black people questioning her. I mean, she's supposed to be immune to all of this. I mean, particularly if you, like you said, you've been involved with this for 40-something years, and a few questions like this bothers you. Yeah, typical. That's all I got to say.
Other folks that we have not heard from, do you all have commentary you wanted to share?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening to Gus and the callers. I'm so glad that you had this program. I actually didn't even realize that it was happening until this evening when I finished listening to Workplace. This is the caller from D.C., and before I make my comments, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Thomas from New York for refusing to call her Sue Africa. I know that probably isn't a very codified thing to say, as Neil Fuller tells us that you should refer to people by the name that they ask to be called. But I'm sorry, that's just nonsense. And I give great props to Thomas for not calling her Sue Africa. The other thing I wanted to say, I wanted to comment about two things. The first was in regard to the way that she spoke. Gus, I had just emailed you today about this exact same thing. And this is something that I've noticed with a lot of white people that have come on the program and just white people in general that I've met throughout my life who spend an inordinate amount of time with predominantly black people, that they sort of take on this, what I think they deem to be this black speak, for lack of a better term. I don't even really like to refer to it as that because I'm black, my husband's black, I know all the callers are predominantly black, and I don't hear that same affect, but it tends to be this affect that I hear from white people as though they're trying to imitate black people. And usually it's this manner of speaking that is riddled with profanity, is a lot of slang, and just certain terminology that is just, it's ridiculous. So I think that that's a huge act of racism. I think because, like I said, many of the black people that I know, myself included, as well as like my husband, do not speak in that manner, and we're all black people, but maybe she wouldn't think of us as real black people. The other observation that I had, and I'm going to bring up Crystal Tyler as well, because it's exactly what I thought about, but when Sue had mentioned about the woman in the organization, the black woman that she referred to, if I remember correctly, she referred to her as black and raw. And when she explained to the caller what she meant by that, that's when it really reminded me of Crystal Tyler, because for listeners who recall, Crystal Tyler had also brought up something similar in terms of, I guess, the black family members of boyfriends that she dated, or friends of family members of black friends that she has, that she would get together with them, and she referred to them as being so honest, or that individuals that kept it real, using sort of that terminology to explain basically them not having a filter, them not being really very couth or politically correct or refined. And when I hear people say that, it makes me think of like a child that sort of doesn't know any better, and a child that just, says whatever, comes to the top of their mind. They see a woman who's heavy set and they say that, she's pregnant, or why is that lady fat, or, whatever the case. And that's what it reminds me of. And I've noticed that again and again, that almost like this gravitation that these white people have to black people, they always use that as almost sort of like an excuse or a justification that, no, they're just honest, they just keep it real, and, whatever term they use to explain it. And again, to me, that's a massive act of racism, because I think it is really referring to black people as very childlike, and that we don't have sensibilities, we don't have the capability of monitoring our speech or monitoring what we say to people. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, everyone. During the program itself, I guess the best word I can think of right now, as far as where my mind was at, I was rather dumbfounded on what to ask this white woman, because of her expertise into deflecting questions. It doesn't matter, and there's no mistake on any of the callers who was asking her questions. That was precise and direct as possible. It doesn't matter to her as a white woman. I've seen that out of Mr. Trump. I've seen that out of Mrs. Clinton. I've seen that out of several other white female guests. And I don't have to see any more of white people and their ability to, no matter what you say to them and how accurate you say to them, they are determined that they're not going to efficiently answer your question, because it will reveal some level of truth about the system of racist white supremacy. and she proved that she's an expert at that. Now, mind you, white people themselves would probably deem her as psychotic. I believe she spent some time in an institution, and but that doesn't bother them because they are very thrifty with all of their participants, and they would throw her right in the midst of non-white black people. And as I've stated before, white females are quite proficient. They can go any and everywhere and around any and everybody. And she's just an example of how she can nestle into the deepest areas of our attempts to solve this problem. And it kind of like tells me about the weakness of faux-wallism, as opposed to, as Mr. Fuller suggests, individual non-white people rallying around a code. Then you can basically keep that white person at a particular distance, because you would have the code in between yourself and that white person to be able to kind of defend your sanity to the level to whereas you can practice counter racism under the circumstances. But she was quite skillful. So that's why, basically I tried to take a statement in my question to her, which was very brief, and it was on purpose, basically to get her to admit something. And quickly, just before it was like as fast as the sprinter from Jamaica, how she attempted to deflect even her own answer by stating that she didn't hear it. And I know it wasn't at that point in time, there wasn't any interference, technical interference, and she heard the straight question and she answered it and then tried to backtrack on it within seconds on it. And that's why I quickly just stated, go ahead and go to the next caller, because that's all I wanted the listeners to hear, this white woman to accept logic. And as Mr. Fuller stated, is that our codification has to be so razor sharp that you can put it down and a racist can't pick it up and use it against you. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
For sure. Other folks that we have not heard from, if we have not heard from you at all, if you had a hand up, feel free to chime in.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. I agree with your comments, especially the last caller. But when I initially heard it on your show, I didn't respond. I didn't respond to call. I didn't make a respond to call in because I really didn't have anything to ask her. Because this is what I heard her. I heard her say. Number one, she had a lot of precious speech. It was hard to get a word in edgewise. She centered on herself for the most part, and she sounded like, all due respect, she sounded like a white person who lives in an impoverished neighborhood as opposed to someone from a white privileged family. And then she's talking about racism, how, she was racist. So she comes from a privileged home, and she was taught not to look at color, but she didn't realize her parents was racist until she joined MOVE. But yet she claimed she was racist at some point in her life. Okay, and then she said that she experienced racism when the cops planted the heroin on her. I definitely didn't understand that either. One thing I noticed about her, I know education don't make everybody intelligent, but she is not a deep thinker at all. That I picked up too. And then when she claimed that white people are jealous of blacks because of their physical strength, my first thought was, well, what are they jealous of regarding black women, right? And then she said that her husband is not black, but he's a white Spanish man, whiter than she is. I mean, I found her to be very, very confused, and that answer to who do you think is more confused, whites or blacks, about racism, and she said white people, she can apply that to herself because she is very, very confused. I don't think she has a clue. She could claim that that she's not racist. She could claim that she don't see the system, to use her words, as white supremacy. That I don't understand at all. She claiming that they don't see color and all this nonsense, and it doesn't make any. It's just so confusing. And she really do sound like someone who's lacking a lot of intelligence. Now she may be doing what she's doing, but when it comes to conceptualizing racism and all that is involved, I really don't think she really understands it at all. And I don't know what principles she's applying. I didn't look them up from the MOVE organizations, but I would bet that those principles have racism written all over them in terms of getting them through. So that's the comment that I wanted to make. I just feel that she's racist. I think she don't have a clue about what it is. Thank you for listening.
Yes, ma'am. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you had a hand up and we haven't heard from you yet, you should comment now.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hello to you, Gus, the host, and to all the callers and stuff. I just a couple of comments. Talking about how she sounds, what I tend to think is, I think the young lady who talks about how she sounds and that black, trying to get that black affectation, I think that young lady, she was a couple of callers, she was calling before the caller right before me. I think she makes a very good point with that. What I hear is when I hear white women talk, it just sounds so strident to me, almost like fingernails straight across the chalkboard. And it is, to me, trying to compete because I guess, black women, our voices are probably heavier. And, therefore, so that when we speak with you, it's just kind of like a lot of authority as opposed to them with these, I don't know if you want to call it soft, but these voices that I guess to them they don't carry an authority. Maybe she's talking about how strong we were, and we were jealous of black people because black people were so strong. So I think that's something to me, but there's something that I heard, but it just sounds like to me fingernails scraping across a chalkboard. The incident with the coat, I just think she deliberately did it. I'm just sorry. I just think that because that's what white people do. There were two coats in the closet. I don't think she had any problem reaching in that closet, getting that black woman's coat to put her dog's puppies on. That is just what they do. That is how they are. I guess there is something like you say, because my question is, I wonder why she initially even joined this organization, but, the thing that she was saying, it always did seem to be a deflection to black people, when she made the statement about slavery, and it's like, Africans were that too, they so black. It's like, and actually when I heard that first, I began to listen in with this one ear, if you will, because I'm just like, because I have a big problem with white women, and I remember just like for me right out of college and working and some of the issues that I was having with white women, and I did not know what was going on with these women. I'm just like, I would tell people, I'm like, white women, I would talk to my friends, no one could say anything. Well, now it's 4 years later, and now I understand what was going on back then. So I have big issues with white women, and so to the point that they will always be wrong. And I know that may not be right, but, to me, so, when she comes, because I even wonder, I did go when the show, when you had her on the show, I did go out and Google her, because it's like I wanted to see what she looked like. But then I really, too, you had Ramona Africa on, I went out, and I saw John, see what John Africa looked like. And he looked like a white man to me, but, the picture I saw of him was on Google, they were saying he was black, and he looked like a white man to me. But, and the only last thing I'll say is, it's just something about our organization that white people want to come and join. You asked her a question, how come you didn't go work with your people and basic white people? She gave you some answer. And I'm always like leery of that too, that when it comes to these things, how we want to help, but yet you want to come to our organization. So I agree with you. You made the other statement, how they want to come to our organization, where they would be, it's sad to say, some of us would put them up on a pedestal, and their egos would be stroked, and, they would be looked upon, almost like they're God forgotten us by some of us. And so, I just, it was an interesting show. I have to give kudos to you, because when she accused you of being cop and all that up right there, I just kind of felt, I listened to the show, and I was like, if I was Gus, I'd be like, okay, thank you, good show, it would have been it for me, but, you stuck through it, and so I give you kudos for that. But, and I do think Thomas has a very good point. He says, I just won't call her Africa. I think that's a very good point. Anyway, I'll mute myself. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Other folks that we have not heard from, you have a hand up and we have not heard from you.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. This is a female caller in New York. Okay, to answer your question about her speech, I have some friends in North Philly, and when I hear her, I hear this lady I know, one of my elders named Miss Nancy. She sounds exactly, black woman, sounds exactly like Miss Nancy. So I don't know if that's like a North Philly vernacular that she picked up being around the MOVE members, but I did notice that as well. Did exercise a little bit of VGQ, and you did speak about how this is about independent compensatory thought. When I asked Ramona Africa about, when she was on the program about C.O.W.S, Africa, it was because when I saw the documentary, Let the Fire Burn, that was one of the main things that stood out to me. I mean, of course, all the other atrocities and the political nonsense and the terrorism was front and center, but that stuck out to me because while they showed a picture of C.O.W.S Africa, they never, I don't believe, if I could be incorrect, they never mentioned anything about them being white MOVE organization members. So that stood out to me, and I always wondered about that, and I was glad that you had Miss Africa, Ramona Africa, on the show, so that I could ask her about whether or not she was ever considered suspect as far as being a racist is concerned. And it does speak to our level of confusion. I do believe that we did read in Mandela, when we read, I think it was a Long Walk Home, Nelson Mandela's book, that there was a portion in there where he said that seeing a homeless white person, or I'm paraphrasing, a homeless black person is a crime, but seeing a homeless white person or white person down on their luck is a sin. So if Mandela could exhibit that level of what I call in my confusion, and I think that any of us can. But back to Sue, I think I did write an email to you, Gus, about her when she was on the program while she was speaking. And I think that, in my opinion, that she's what Dr. Welsing points out in her work very well. She speaks about narcissism that white people have. And I think she did speak about white women in particular. I could be incorrect. I wanted to have my books in front of me. I wanted to have Dr. Welsing's book, and I wanted to have Dr. Ani's book in front of me because, I could probably pick out examples of her behavior and her rhetoric in there that match up exactly with some of the theories in those two elders, my ancestors' books. But I don't have it with me because I'm relocating, and my books are all packed up. So, but anyway, I wrote to you that regarding her question, the question you asked her about logic, that she had so much trouble understanding that word logic. I just thought that her logic and her thought only pertains to her actions. This is a part of her whole narcissism, that pathology that white women have. It only pertains to her actions and her thoughts and what she has learned. That's what I was hearing, and not the victims of racism's thoughts or their experiences or their knowledge of white terrorism, because it was all about her. I'm the strong one. I was like this when I came in. It was all about her. So I picked that up, that narcissism, immediately. And I didn't think that she could answer your question about being it would be logical for us for any black person to suspect her as a racist white supremacist, because if that question was answered and then she told you it was correct for you to suspect her as a racist, then that means that the rhetoric would be invalid, because she knows that she's spewing rhetoric. See, she's done this for over 40-something years. And she's been a narcissist, wows the crowd. That's what they do. And she knows as a white woman, she has an advantage with that. Also, I believe that I really wish that I would have gotten to ask her more questions about her relationship with her family, particularly with her father. She had to mention that he worked for the government. And I thought that was key. I thought that was very significant, that she had to mention that he worked for the government. But then she had to go back on that victim trip and tell us that her mother was a manic depressive. I also thought of Dr. Camborn when he talks about how some of these white people in these civil service positions, that these civil service positions that they take are a form of white welfare. That with her career being as being a waitress. This is what, and this is going back to what the previous female caller said. This is where I believe that's where it was for her. And being that she had this narcissistic pathology going on, her identification with black people was something that I feel that satisfied that. I don't think she has any interest in justice for black people at all. That's not what I got from her. There was something else that was brought up. She said that she was not diagnosed with mental illness when she was asked by one of the callers. This is not one of the callers that you played tonight, but I remember that. She's like, oh, no, it was nothing like that. Okay? But early on in the interview, she did say something about being manic depressive. So she lied right there, which is what they do. And again, she was the white superwoman. She was stronger than everybody. But anyway, I think that whole interview, her whole everything she said was nothing but for rhetoric. Her entire life has been around spewing rhetoric for attention. Okay? And like I said, I would have liked to ask her more about her relationship with her parents and her siblings. And I also thought it was significant. If you go back to the top of the call, Gus, that you played tonight, when you asked her the first question, the initial question posed to her was regarding her experience with racism, she laughed. And we talked about that, how they laugh. They give this little laugh at the beginning of the questions. And during that interview, I counted twice where she laughed. But that's all I had, and I'll mute my line.
What was her other laugh?
I'm trying to recall. It was a question about her working with white people. Yes. It was a question about her working with white people. What does she do? And she laughed. She laughed twice during that interview.
Fascinating. other folks that we have not heard from. Hopefully people will not wait till the last minute. If you know you have a comment you want to share, observations, what have you, do not wait till the last minute. Go ahead and get your hand up so we can make sure we get to everybody. If we have not heard from you and you have a hand up, feel free. Your line should be open. If you have a hand
I'd
up.
like to share.
Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. First, I wanted to say that, I mean, there's so many things to comment on this, but white people can pretty much fake ignorance whenever they choose to, just whatever is suitable for them. They can just pretend like, just for instance, you said the word logical to her and she just didn't know what logical mean or whatever, what logical meant. And she just wouldn't answer that question. But they can just pick and choose whenever they want to be ignorant or not. I think there's several factors that might contribute to white people joining like organizations such as this. I think that one of the reasons might be that they realize that, I guess within the hierarchy of being a white person, being a racist, that maybe they fit into the lower rings of the hierarchy of white people. So they choose to go around black people so they can be, of course, the most highest person around. So, and then of course they have some type of some sexual attraction, and they want to sexually abuse black people or non-white people. That's another reason. And also, I think with her particularly, she had some type of, it's like a mental disorder or whatever. I know she mentioned that her mom was getting some type of shock therapy or something, I guess, when she was in her mother's womb or whatever. I don't know if that might have, just kind of messed up her natural order. I think that, of course, it's not going to just keep her from practicing racism, but I think just the way that she practices racism, maybe it was disrupted by that shock therapy, or maybe there was a contributing factor. That's just a theory of mine. Another thing of note, of course, she threw that word industrialist out, and she wouldn't. I think she admitted that it was white people, but of course, that's, coded language. Another thing, white people and dogs. Again, I know there's a female caller that calls into the cows and talks about white people and their relationship with dogs. But it's just funny how, she had her so-called sister, her coat that was really sentimental to her. She used it as some type of mat for her dogs, or for the dogs to give puppies on. And of course, white people, they care about dogs a lot more. They respect dogs and they care about dogs a lot more than they do black people in particular. And again, I think the reason because of that is because they have complete dominion over dogs. And with black people, they have dominion over black people and non-white people, but not so much as dogs. So they revere dogs a lot more. And again, white people, when they join these organizations, I know a thing that Nellie Fuller says is about standing by your word or whatever. But of course, they always stand behind someone else's word, which is, she would just say, no, the teachings of John Africa, the teachings of John Africa. And we're like, what is your definition of racism? What do you think? And they can never tell you, what they really think. They always hide behind someone else's word. And then again, and my last thing is that white people like to really control the dialogue. They want a loud talk. They want to, divert the conversation to something else. They want to control the cadence of the dialogue. They just always try to strong arm the actual conversation that's being held or whatever. And it's just another way of practicing racism. But that's all I had. Thank you.
For sure. Other folks that we have not heard from, other folks that we haven't heard from, if you had commentary you wanted to share, feel free.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to say that great show, Gus. By the way, this is Ken Steele from Chicago. I just want to say great show, Gus. Very informative, very difficult to listen to. As many people kind of noted, her, what many people kind of refer to as a black scent, very put on, very tacky, very typical of racists that are operating in groups of of non-white people, specifically black people. And one thing that I really wanted to note was that the show is kind of a great illustration, not even kind of, it's a really good illustration of why four-wallism and why being members of these so-called groups or organizations is probably not the best idea for victims of white supremacy. They can easily be infiltrated by people like C.O.W.S, Africa, and they can easily be corrupted. If you look at the story of the MOVE organization, the whole thing was violently taken down. Members lost their lives, and none of their goals were accomplished. So, and I guess the people that they have left are members like C.O.W.S, Africa. So, in no disrespect to the founding members of MOVE or the participants in that organization, but I do believe that this show is a good illustration of why Neely Fuller's advice of not joining, not participating in any sort of four-wallism or any sort of groups is probably some of the best advice that is afforded in the code. And I'm going to move my line from there.
Right on. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you have a hand up and we have not heard from you, press *6 if you dialed in. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Other folks, if you had a hand up and we have not heard from you, you should speak now.
Hello, good night.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I didn't expect her to sound the way that she did. I found her very vulgar. She cursed a lot. I was cracking up when she said that you were laying in the cut. She said you were laying in the cut, and when she started accusing you of being the cop, I was cracking up. I didn't really find her very fine. I just found her very vulgar, and so obvious that she was racist. You know, there was no suspect about it. She was a racist. And I was curious about you guys kept mentioning the name. I never heard this program before. I think it's Barbara. I can't remember. I can't pronounce the last name. What's the last name? Trepanier or something like that.
Barbara Trepanier.
Was she as vulgar as Miss Sue?
No. Now, she did drop some, profanities upon her exit, but she, at the beginning at least, she did not start off like C.O.W.S. Africa.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, and I definitely think Miss Sue also, I think she probably has when I look at her picture, she looks like she might be on some drugs, and she sounded a bit off mentally. I was shocked when the guy called in and asked her, and she was mentally unstable. I didn't expect him to be like that blunt. But yeah, I did suspect that she was mentally unstable when I was hearing her speak. I was just I was very surprised that someone like her would be representing the MOVE organization the way she carried herself. She was very, to me, uncodified. I'm used to white people being very specific with their language and stuff like that, and she was not. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Might even have to use a different U word, uncouth. Other folks, did we miss anybody? Anybody who dialed in that we have not heard from? Anybody that we have not heard from at all?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was thinking she called you a cop because you blew her cover. Like, I think maybe it's from all the time she did in jail that she don't think that, black people have a better understanding of racism, white supremacy. But it was kind of like her calling you a cop, like cops understand racism, white supremacy, and you understand a little more or less confused about racism, white supremacy. And her going undercover cop for her whole entire life, and for her cover to be blown in about 2 or 3 hours, I think you got underneath her skin. And I'll mute my line.
She definitely was, there's the hounds, she definitely did not seem pleased with Gus. I'm sure that has been communicated to other individuals, MOVE members, the whole nine. But yeah, she definitely did not seem pleased. That is not the first time Gus has been accused of being a cop, agent, any other lingo you want to put around that. Anybody that we missed completely, folks have additional comments, we'll get you in as well. But anybody that we missed entirely, who has a hand up that we have not heard from at all. All right, I'll assume we got everybody. Please do not lollygag. We have 20 minutes left. If you know you have a comment you want to make sure you get in about South Africa before we wrap, don't wait till the last minute. Go ahead and get your hand up now. I do have my copy of Dr. Welsing's The ISIS Papers. I've been rereading that over the summer. The portion where she talked about the dog, the incident where she was practicing racism, and it wasn't just a random coat. It was a coat of one of her quote-unquote sisters in MOVE. It was a coat that this black female's grandmother had made for her, and she knew that she wasn't ignorant about the history of the coat, who made it, where she got it from. She wasn't ignorant about any of that at all when she decided to use it for her dogs. The female caller in New York, when she mentioned specifically about the alienation, anxiety, and narcissism, it is no coincidence that Dr. Welsing talks about the white fetish for canines in that very chapter on alienation, anxiety, and narcissism, where she writes, Western man's and woman's affection for the dog is reflected in the fact that in 1978 in New York City, dogs were permitted to put 250,000 pounds of fecal matter on the streets each day, defiling the environment for human beings. And is this love and worship of the dog reflected in the mirror image of the words God and dog, even at this advanced stage in the expression and evolution of Western white civilization and culture? Further, as relationships among people become more alienated, Western peoples and those non-white peoples who have been influenced most heavily by Western culture are gaining more satisfaction from feeding, clothing, loving, and kissing canines than in feeding, clothing, loving, and kissing human beings. Western civilization's original symbolized relationship to the canine, following the African black mother's rejection of the albino mutant offspring, undoubtedly has influenced the frequent use of the cursing expressions bitch and son of a bitch. These degrading expressions are used pejoratively because deep within the unconscious Western white albino psyche, their rejected mutant status is viewed pejoratively in a world where the human norm is to have hue, color. I will stop there. I think that all the way around, since she did say in the second, I think I did play that today, where she said that she was manic depressive prior to joining the MOVE organization and whatever other physical ailments she had at that point earlier in her existence. I think a lot of that goes to exactly what's been articulated, that alienation, rejection, her status as a white female, that she felt much more powerful, much more affirmed in her existence as an individual classified as white, and just in her individual white power coming to this organization, the status that she gets, the credentials that she gets as a down white person. I think I've heard from many, many whites that that is a symbol in and of itself, being able to go and be around other victims of racism and have status amongst them, and everything that a lot of folks have already touched on in the broadcast. Anything else folks wanted to make sure they pointed out that they heard from Sue Africa? If you have comments that you got left out, or if you thought of something else since we've been discussing.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought it was interesting as well that she mentioned that you had no respect for Mumia and you had no respect for John Africa because you spoke to her a certain way and she felt as if you had no respect for her. So your respect for those men was pretty much predicated on you giving respect to her. I found that to be fascinating as well.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, the only guest that would be comparable to this for you to get, Gus, would be if you could get Rachel Dorsal. Like, I can't even think anyone. I would like to just reiterate on my codification. I can't call a white person an African. I don't even call the South Africans, the white people, Africans. I call them Boers because that's what they are, and I just can't do it. And I don't care if she had any disrespect to it, because you're in a group calling yourself an African and you're obviously white. I just don't get that. But other than that, though, I think this is just to reiterate that, this show was so good because of this is a person that can stand in front of 99% of black people and get their full attention. I think that a lot of her vulgarness and the way she spoke, that the cadence that sounded a lot of little black. I mean, if you put in mind that she was in this black organization, and also she did time in prison, and we know that a majority of the prison, especially in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, there'll be a lot of black females that she'll be around and probably mimicking them. And where else could you go? You did your time in this organization, and people are going to look up to you, and they're going to, I can't see her leaving. Like she said, I'll be ineffective if I leave the move. What would I do? She has nothing else to fall back on, but I will guarantee you that if something popped off, she'll be white in a second. Leave that move stuff behind if she had to, without a doubt. And I'll be my mom. Can I be heard?
Yes, can I be?
Roz, then we'll get retired firefighter.
All right, thank you. I was just going to say, I just sat here contemplating the whole discussion, why she would join this black group, and not only why, but why she would leave her existence with her family and all of this stuff to be in this group. And I thought about it when you brought up the whole idea of narcissism, because I've always been of the understanding that, in my opinion, racism is a combination of narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, and then, of course, actual racism, white supremacy. But those are the three, I think, mental disturbances that help drive how they behave. And I thought about it, and I said, well, you know what? She's probably was getting more white validation, quote unquote love, being put on a pedestal, especially the way that she described the fact, well, especially when you described the fact that, some black members of MOVE had to go to the police to get protection from other MOVE members because they would be physically assaulted, and none of this stuff was visited upon her. And I think she got more out of being around black people and being proverbially worshipped by them than she ever would have gotten out of living with her family. So I think the driving force for that, I think, is narcissism. It's the whole thing about her. And it's, someone else brought up earlier, I think it was one of the female callers, that everything she said was about her. Me, 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 me. And I agree emphatically with that. And I think that really, really kind of hit me in this place where I said, okay, now I can understand why she would put herself through all of that in order to stay in this group. But I agree with Thomas 1,000% that if something really hit the fan, she would definitely go back to being white, and she could at any moment, and she probably does it now. We just don't really know about it. But yeah, I just thought about that aspect of it, And I'll mute my line.
Yes. Consider under the global system of racist white supremacy, which has already been established and expanded and now in refinement, how exciting it would be, in my imagination, to a white person to be constantly right in the midst of their victims, spreading the pestilence of white supremacy right in front of their faces on a daily basis, knowing that the victims have Stockholm syndrome, which is not their fault to have that Stockholm syndrome, and the godlike adulation that is given to that white person, who in this case, and as you know, a lot of cases, yes, there is some kind of psychotic behavior that exists. What also, last but not least, what also comes to my mind is the 3 T's: tacky, trashy, terroristic. From Mr. Fuller's code book, and along with the caller on the archive who mentioned asked her, well, why are you I think the quote was, why are you so vulgar? I was trying to think of something of that nature, not necessarily saying what the caller, how the caller framed his question, but now that I thought about it, I would say something like either tacky or trashy, which she definitely was. And under the global system of racist white supremacy, while non-white people are trying to get an answer to neutralize racist white supremacy, white people who are in our presence should be the nicest, courteous, most people that ever is. Any white person who is raising their voice from a standpoint of being tacky and trashy like she was, that's a big no-no. That's a definite sign. I'm almost about to say that it's as much as a sign of a white person practicing racism as a white person having sex with a non-white person. In that light, I mean, it's like super obvious, to me. And I mean, and a buzzer go off of warning. And as I mentioned before, this is another example of a treacherous white woman who can go anywhere, but they don't have to get into our heads if we work at it. They don't have to get into our heads. What can be put in our heads is a razor-sharp codified system, and I think that would eventually work. Thank you.
Anyone we have not heard from? Anybody that we missed completely who had commentary? We didn't miss anybody. Right on. Time is ticking down. We're not doing any last minute stuff today. I did want to point out the documentary, Let the Fire Burn, Jason Osder, suspected racist, came out in 2014, right before everything kicked off in Ferguson. He was on the program, Mr. Osder, in the summer of 2014. It depends on which version of that film you see. If you see it as it aired on PBS, they edited out a lot of the bits where C.O.W.S. Africa is in. It's not like she plays a dominant role in it, but she is in there, and they, are interviewing her. They have archival footage of her from like 30 years ago, maybe even older than that. But it depends on which version you see. If you get the longer version, the version that aired on PBS, is slightly shorter. So if you get the longer version, you'll see her in that documentary. I asked him about that because I think the first time I saw that film, I saw it as it aired on PBS, and then the second time I saw it when I was prepping for him to come on the program, I saw the longer version and I noted the discrepancy. Anyway, if you see that documentary, the line where she says, how do you describe a vulgar system without using vulgar words, I'm paraphrasing, that is repeated exactly in the documentary film. They have archival footage from like 35 years ago, maybe even older, where a Black Move member is saying the exact, I think she repeated what he said almost verbatim, which to me just, again, I've seen this tactic. In my view, that is a racist strategy where some individual classified as white, they will take something that a black person has said, either they wrote it in a book or they said it, they will then take that and repeat that to justify some incorrect, illogical stance while they are practicing racism, white supremacy, but they will use these statements, the verbiage from a victim of racism, so that you cannot point out anything incorrect that they're doing. It would have to be attributed to, well, I'm just quoting John Africa, or this is what, James Baldwin said, this is what Frantz Fanon said, this is what Dr. King said. They could just go down the line. Typically, it's going to be a black person that's dead when they do this sort of thing, act of necrophilia as well. Anything else folks want to make sure they get in? Any final comments?
Yeah, I had a request that the gentleman that's in Milwaukee, if he could just briefly just tell us what's the climate there, because they got like a media freeze on whatever's going on there. I just want to know if he was still on the line. If he could just tell us what's really going on. I'll mute my line. Thank you for the show, Gus.
Can I get in something brief about the show before the Milwaukee caller gives us the update?
Well, let's even see if he's here. The caller in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, are you present with us? See if they're still here.
Sir. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, I'm sir. Ross, you go ahead, I'll go chime in after Ross.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I was just going to say, I remember when I asked her the question about how could she call herself a victim when she's basically a part of a system that was created by her ancestors for her. She pulled something similar to what she did with you too, because she said that I understand where you're coming from. And I wish I could have got to ask her the logic question, but we ended up having to move to the next caller. But that stood out as well, because she pulled that on me too, that she understood that. I'm like, what do you mean? There's nothing to understand. You're a white female in a system that's dominated by you and your people, created by your ancestors for you to do just what you're doing right now. So it just made no logical sense. I think she's probably one of the most important racists that's been on the show, in my opinion. And like Thomas said, I don't think there's many that would compare to her as far as just one's ability to really understand how white people function and how insidious white females could be in particular. Thank you.
The caller in Milwaukee, did you want to? I think we had multiple people who called in from Wisconsin today, but go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So I guess I called in the Scotty show earlier, but we had a situation where a gas station worker came outside and shot in the air at some black teenagers. I guess they was causing some kind of disturbance or something like that. And so the dude came outside, shot at the kids. He said he shot in the air, but he came out, shot at the kids. So the people from that area started protesting outside of the gas station, and they made the gas station owner actually lower his prices under $2 for gas, which is illegal. And because they was posted up outside the gas station selling the things that like customers would need from out of the gas station, so they was kind of like cutting into his business. So then, like right after that, you had a few homicides happen in the area. Like the next night, homicide. And then it was like another homicide, and then the narrative changed to the niggas running them up. And so fast forward to present day,
the day before this officer-involved shootings, we had 5 homicides here. Okay, so the officer-involved shooting, the first report I heard was that the guy got shot, was shot in the back. And then they said, oh, well, he had like a 500-round drum, and he turned around and, raised the gun at the officer, and he got shot in the chest. So it's a couple conflicting stories. There is on social media a video of his younger brother stating that they, got they carry concealed cards, and that black people don't have the same rights as, white people do with the guns. And, that's what happened to his brother. It's also some reports stating that he had a lawsuit in against the police department. That hasn't been confirmed yet. And just today, this just came out today, they got his interview with his sister. This is on the public news. And because they said it's a black officer that shot the victim, and they said that his sister said they know each other very well. They went to high school together. Now, this little piece of information, I find that very, very interesting and alarming at the same time, because this city, Milwaukee, I know y'all probably seen the reports, most segregated, the list goes on. But when it's so small, like damn near all the black people know each other, or, know somebody that knows somebody. So to encounter somebody from you went to high school with, and then not to give them the benefit of the doubt, I think really sees the narrative that Uncle Ruckus, a.k.a. David Clark, been putting out there. And the last thing I'll add is that the reports of the National Guard, the governor called the National Guard in, but they didn't, I guess, get on the ground and, get active. But Mr. Clark was the one that blew the whistle. He started putting the narrative out there. Let's get the National Guard out here, and then white boy okayed it. And that's all I got. Any questions or whatever, I guess I can try to answer them the best I can.
Right on. Appreciate the update. Was on the mute button. Please do not ever reference any black person as Uncle Ruckus. That's just name calling on this broadcast. I was on the mute button. Just wanted to hear what was happening in Wisconsin, but that is not something that I want to promote or encourage at all. Thinking of any black person as Uncle Ruckus or any other name. If they are a black person, they are a victim of racism, the people that are most to blame for all of these problems, what's happening in Wisconsin worldwide, are white. As I understand it, regardless of what Sheriff Clark is doing, he is not white. He cannot be most to blame for anything that is happening in Milwaukee, unless I'm in error. With that, we pretty much did our 3 hours. I'm sure we will have ample time to discuss what's happening in Milwaukee throughout the week. We have one final comment. Anyone wanted to make sure they got in before we move to wrap things up?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that C.O.W.S. Africa, I don't know if anybody made reference to this, but C.O.W.S. Africa, during the conversation, when she was explaining her interpretations of the differences between black people and white people, one thing that she characterized black people as typically is unsophisticated. I think that was the word that she used. And I think that kind of coincides with the use of her, I guess, for lack of a better term, black accent, or her put-on accent. I think in her mind she has to kind of dumb herself down to speak with the Negras. And we don't have control of our emotions, and we can't, I guess, operate in a way that is anything less than a knee-jerk reflection of how we're feeling at any given moment. So I think that kind of plays into her. That is gives some insight into how she thinks of non-white Black people and how she interacts with them as well, and what she values in Black people as well. I'm going to mute my line from here.
Great. I'm very sure Sue Africa, she would probably be one of the first to jump up and say, see, that's why we have this problem. Black people like Sheriff Clark. It's his fault that this is still going on. You just add his name to the list. President Obama, Colin Powell, former Mayor Wilson Goode, Black people on the continent who sold Black people into slavery, and on and on and on. Gus is probably on that list as well now, since Gus is a cop. So you can just add Sheriff Clark's name to the list of Black people who are to blame for racism still being in existence, courtesy Sue Africa. We will wrap there. We did our 3. Folks have additional commentary, questions. If you can't find something in the archives, feel free, drop an email untiljustice@gmail.com, and we will hook you up pronto. You can message us on Facebook. We're on Twitter at untiljustice, at untiljustice. With that, minimum we'll be here on Thursday. We'll have to see how the week progresses. If we have something prior to then, looking to do some work on my essay for Dr. Welsing. But certainly feel free, let us know if you have suggestions, guest suggestions, or other commentary. Feel free, just drop us a line and we will respond promptly. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope it was a constructive investment of your time and energy, and I hope, if anything, this further evidences why I generally look forward to having whites on the program. They are the problem. That is where we should be focusing much of our time and energy, studying them, getting better at asking questions, and asking them questions with suspicion that they are racist and are currently practicing racism, white supremacy. Always, I think, very important. Conversing, studying racist man, racist woman, racist child. With that, again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white terrorism, regardless of where you happen to be in the known universe, Milwaukee, elsewhere. Being sober would be best. I think we want to be in position to make the best possible decisions to keep ourselves as safe as possible. Certainly if you're going to be in a vehicle, driver, passenger, even if you're a pedestrian, you do not want to be intoxicated and bump into a race soldier, badge or no. It can be a life-altering, life-ending experience in a matter of seconds. Alcohol, whites, one of the worst combinations in the known universe. Keep that in mind at all times. Take it seriously. We will be back later in the week. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other Black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of Black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another Black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Context of White Supremacy signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.